Story 1. Spoiled Sil demanded I give them my baby as a 30th birthday gift. I pretended to agree, then publicly exposed my S's stupidity and immaturity live on social media. I don't know if anyone could relate to my problem or have even heard of it. Feels so bizarre to even write this. It's about my Mill and Sil, who is a spoiled brat. Sil is 29F and a single woman. Well, that's not a problem. The problem is she's an entitled woman who cannot take no for an answer. I'm 37F, married to my husband 40M for 12 years. We have 2 kids, 9-year-old boy and 5-year-old girl. Though we have a happy marriage, touch wood, my pain in the ass is my overly dramatic Mill and overly pampered Sil. Before I tell you more about my situation, let me paint a picture of my Mill and Sil. They are social bees. They are like those upper-class rich women in soap operas who spend their afternoons at salons and massage parlors, and spend the evening at bars with other useless women bitching about each other. They are women busy in their own delusional world. They don't work. All they do is shopping and gossiping. My Phil is busy making money, and these women are busy spending them. Phil is almost a non-existent member of the family, or rather just a cash cow. There is a rumor that Phil has a mistress and Mill knows about it, so it's kind of a pact between them that he fulfills all their demands without any question, while he gets to have a mistress. I don't know how true it is, but seeing Phil's role in the family, it looks like this is true. Otherwise, no sane man would remain quiet at Mill and Sil's stupidity. Coming to my miserable life, so last week Mill called and asked me out for lunch, and that too on a Wednesday afternoon. I wanted to say a straight-up no, but it was after a long time that she wanted to meet me, so I discussed an alternate schedule. I said if we could meet on the evenings for dinner, but they are busy women in the evenings, busy with friends at the gaming parlor, so it was decided that we meet on Saturday afternoon. I go there in my normal outfit, and she shows up in an utterly shimmery black dress. What a choice for an afternoon lunch. And she comes and criticizes my dressing sense. After done with the small talk, she starts off asking what were we planning to gift my Sil on her 30th birthday. I was confused because her 29th birthday was just a couple of months ago. I said, her next birthday is like 10 months away. She laughed and said that's why we need to plan it in prior. Remember what happened this time? She got upset with the gifts you guys gave her. Birthday just got spoiled. I rolled my eyes like, yeah, of course we spoiled her birthday because we gave her a normal $250 dress and not a premium Zara one with a matching sapphire neckpiece. She went on to say, to avoid upsetting her, I have thought of a perfect gift which you guys should give it to her as her birthday present, and what was that? A baby. That's right. She wanted me to have a baby for her entitled brat. I was aghast. How could anyone even imagine that someone would ask for a baby as a gift? I could not comprehend what she was saying. I had to ask her multiple times if I heard it right. She said, yes, I want you to have a baby and gift it to Stacy, Sil, as her 30th birthday present. I flipped out, and why do you think I would do that? She yelled, to cover for your substandard gift this time. You ruined her 29th birthday, so you owe this to her. I stood up and said, I don't owe anyone anything. I'm not a broodmare to breed a child and give it to her. I stormed off the restaurant. On the way home, I went to pick up my son from his friend's place. When I reached home, my husband asked me what happened between me and Mill. I asked him what he had been fed. My husband knows my Mill and Sil's tantrums, so he doesn't take them seriously. He said Mill called him and said she suggested a present for Stacy's birthday, which I refused to give it to her, and hence she was mad at me. I said, yeah, she wanted your child to be given as a gift to your sister. Do you want that? For a moment, he thought I was joking and making up the entire thing. He was laughing, rolling on the floor when I narrated the entire story. He was horrified. He was like, what is she even smoking? I made it clear to him that there was no way I was going to accept her demands. My husband pacified me and said we are not having any more children, and we are definitely not giving it to Stacy. The next day was Sunday. We both were at home, lounging on the couch, enjoying our day off when Mill showed up at our house. I said I was tired and want to rest and headed towards my room. Mill stopped me and said she was here to apologize for the last day and asked me to hear her out. I felt so relieved that she finally came back to her senses. She said she was sorry for not giving enough context behind her request. She went on to say, you know, Stacy is turning 30 next year and she has been single for a long time. It's driving her crazy. She needs a distraction in life, and a baby would be a good way of keeping her happy. First of all, a baby is a full-grown human being and not a cotton candy which is brought to keep children happy. If the spoiled brat needs distractions or purpose in life, why doesn't she seek a job? But no, the princess doesn't work. She doesn't even lift a finger at her house. By the way, she still lives with my in-laws because she doesn't earn. She doesn't do any household chores because her nails would get chipped. If you meet her, you'll understand that her brain hasn't developed since her 14th birthday. The paint of her room is still pink, and she owns innumerable pink dresses. She has no knowledge of the world around her. She won't even know the capital city or the president of the country. All she knows is that a huge sum of money just appears on her card, which she blindly spends at the drop of a hat. I said, if Stacy is so keen on having a baby, why doesn't she adopt one? Mill laughed and said, oh, don't be lazy. It's been a while since you have been pregnant, so get the machinery back into action. Adopted babies are such a risk. Who knows what disease runs in their family? With you guys, it's safe. Can't you do this for your Sil? I gave a look of, would you please say something to my husband? He laughed and said that Mill was being ridiculous and I have a lot of motherly duties and career to handle. And amidst this, I cannot have a baby. He also said how weird it would sound that her brother is the father of her child. To this, my Mill responded without a blink, why not? Maria's Dill is also a surrogate for Maria's daughter. So what's a big deal if your wife does the same for Stacy? I was like, what a minute. That was surrogacy. Maria's Dill carried Maria's daughter's child because she couldn't conceive and carry her child. It was a matter of medical condition. Here it's not. If Stacy had a problem having a baby, we would have given a thought of carrying her baby or even making a baby for her. The situation here is different. We have been asked to make a baby as if we are some sort of baby-making machine. My husband suggested Stacy should find a guy for herself, settle down with him, and have her own family rather than complicating the situation here. Mill started sobbing and said her little girl had tried so many times to find a man for herself, but you know how sick men are these days. She pointed towards me and said, you're a lucky woman to have my son, but darling, not everyone is as lucky as you. Stacy cannot be with any ordinary man, you know. She has high standards. The man needs to treat her like we do. I said, yeah, of course. The last man Stacy dumped was because he didn't buy her an overly expensive Gucci bag. Mill tried to justify her pampered princess as $1, but I stood up and said I feel nauseated with a discussion, and I need to rest. One more time, we are not going to have a kid to gift Sil as a birthday present. After a while, my husband came into the bedroom. He cuddled me and tried to lighten my mood. I asked him what did he say to his mother. He said he had made it clear that we are not having any more children, and they should stop bothering us. He said M stormed out of the house in anger. Evil. Can you guys even imagine how ridiculous a situation I'm facing? I want to bang my head against a wall or bang there's to knock some senses into it. Update 1. Hey all. Thanks for engaging on my post. Some of the comments were truly hilarious. You guys are right in saying that Sil is mentally ill. Even I feel it this way. Both Sil and Mill need to get their brains checked. Maybe it got buried under their pounds of makeup LOL. Had it been any other normal people, they would have backed off with the last conversation we had. But here we are dealing with two maniacs. Until now, it was just Mill, but now Sil also got into the picture. I tell you guys, she's 100 times more difficult to talk to because she doesn't understand logic. As I mentioned in my last update, Mill ruined my Sunday with her baby-making pitch. A week later, on the next Sunday, bam, she again shows up with her darling doll. Seemed like they had pledged to ruin my day off. Stacy comes in wearing a skirt and a comfy blouse. This was the first time ever I had seen her without her teeny-tiny skinny clothes. But her hair and nails were done perfectly. My Mill points out and says, do you see? Stacy has already started dressing like a mommy. So this was the reason for her changed dressing sense? Do they really think that changing your wardrobe would make you a mommy? Change your clothes and damn, you're ready to be a mom. Stacy smirked at me and said, I'm in whatever I do. And then she rushes to hug her big brother as if she has not met him for ages. Remember, I told you she behaves like a 14-years-old cutie pie? She screams as if everyone was standing far apart. When is the good news coming? My husband acted dumb and asked what good news she's talking about. She smirked and said, I know you want to give me your baby as a surprise gift on my 30th birthday, but Mom's a spoiler. Now I know what's your plan. I'm so excited to be a mommy of a cute little girl. I have already started shopping for her. My husband stopped her in between. Glad he did because I was about to smack her head. He said, that's not true. We are not going to have any baby. Forget about giving it as a gift. For a long time, she thought he was trying to hide it to not ruin the surprise. How delusional, you see. When she ultimately realized that she's not getting a baby present, she screamed at me, why not? You have always been cruel to me. This is your chance to make it even. Come on, go, you guys get me a cute little baby doll. I said, Stacy, we're not running a baby supply business where you order a cute baby girl and you get one. Do you even know how babies are made? She mellows down and said, you know, I have always wanted a baby girl. I have so much love in me that I want to shower on my baby, and you all are depriving me of that. That baby is going to be the luckiest to have me as the mommy. I'm going to raise her as a confident and successful woman. I assure you guys, you're going to be proud and won't regret a bit. You see, that's why I said you cannot talk to her. This is mindless. First of all, do you guys think she's in her right senses to have a baby? She doesn't even understand that I have no control over the gender of my baby. You don't get choices. They're like a lipstick palette. Second, this witch has never ever lifted a baby in her arms. When my children were infants, she used to shoo them away because they might spit and soil her hair and clothes. Even now, she doesn't let my daughter come near her because she would mess with her nails and hair. How could you imagine this woman to be changing a nappy or swaddling a baby in the middle of the night? Moreover, I cannot suffer for a grueling 9 months and then bear harrowing delivery pain only to give away my child to this pampered princess and see her turning into a mini version of this entitled brat. Stacy was still blabbering her case of proving to be a great mother, but I had zoned out in my thoughts which I wrote above. Suddenly, I stood up and said, look, Stacy, I know you would hate me for this. You anyways hate me always, so it doesn't make any difference. I'm not going to have a baby for you. Do you get that? Or should I write it down for you because it looks like you and your mother have lost your hearing abilities as well as your brains? My husband gestured at me to go easy, but I had lost my mind at their craziness. I told them that I didn't want any further discussion about this and that if they still pester me, I would block them from my house. I came to my room and slammed the door. I don't know, I might have overstepped my boundaries, but hey, look at them. I have no words to describe their toxicity. My husband tried to hint that I was outspoken, but I was so mad at everyone that he didn't dare to say anything further. He just said that his mom and sister called him a simp man and left. I don't care what they say. He needs to stop being a good person to everyone. This Sunday, I was again prepared for another showdown, but it has been silent, and I want to have it this way. I hope this nuisance ends here. Update 2. Oh no, how could I ever think this would end so peacefully? After the blowout, the next 2 weeks were quiet and peaceful. I felt so relaxed without M showing up at our door. But God, it wasn't silent at all. The hustle and bustle was going on online, about which I had no idea. Stacy had been defaming me on social media that I was ripping off her chance to be a mother. She calls herself a beauty expert and posts makeup videos. She has decent followers in her account. I'm not so active on social media because I have a life beyond screen, 2 kids, and a real job. Anyways, Stacy claimed that her brother was game with the idea of having a baby for Stacy, but I was the one denying it. She expressed how she always wanted to become a mother, but since she was single, she's not getting any luck in adoption. Such a lie. They never tried for adoption. Even if they did, I'm sure she wouldn't make it through the adoption interview. Stacy said all sorts of things to show me in a bad light. She said I was denying to give my baby because she's unmarried and I have conservative and rudimentary beliefs. I wanted to reply that I was denying the baby because she's dumb. I didn't know about her hate campaign until my husband's aunt called me to ask why was I doing this to Stacy. That's when I read everything. It was kind of funny how her stupid friends and relatives made me a villain. I mean, even if what she said was true, I still have a right to say no. It's my body, and I can deny it. My husband said to ignore it and that this would pass like a season. I ignored it initially, but how could you not read a public post made against you? We ain't that thick-skinned. I realized she was taking my silence against me and talking trash about me. My friends and I came up with a plan to make Stacy taste her own medicine. I called up Stacy and said I'm deeply concerned by the online campaign she's running against me, and the negativity is spoiling my reputation, so I'm considering bearing a child for you. Yeah, I said this to satisfy her ego. Reputation, my ass. I don't care what she or her stupid followers think about me, but she needed to be put into her place. She has been a pain in my dollar for a long time now. It's time to deal with her. I said, Stacy, why don't you come over, and we discuss a few things before we proceed? She was over the moon thinking she defeated me. When she came to my house, I said since I have agreed to your demands, then why not we go live and inform everyone that you're going to have a baby soon? It would help me wash off the negative reviews, and you would also get good watch time. She's a social media enthusiast, so she agreed immediately. We went live, and I said I have agreed to have a baby for Stacy, so let's have some questions for the would-be mama. Stacy was so happy with her victory that she didn't realize what she was signing up for. I asked, so Stacy, tell me, what plans do you have for the baby? She giggled and ranted, oh, I'm so excited to be a mama of a baby girl. I have already started shopping for her. I'm going to make her look like a star from her first day in this world. I'm never going to leave her without makeup. She would always have to look perfect and presentable. I didn't clarify that no one assures her that I would be able to conceive a baby girl. Surely I let the audience school her about it. Her answer already offended a lot of people. The video was flooded with negative comments and trolls, but Stacy was so busy expressing herself that she didn't notice any of it. I said, that's so sweet, Stacy, but what about the time when the baby is fussy and crying? How are you going to manage? She was like, the girls of our family don't cry, do they? I mean, I have never seen your daughter cry. She's always so cleanly dressed up and so calm. Without making her feel stupid, I said, it's because you have seen her for a very brief period. All babies crying. Behind a clean, well-dressed baby, there are hours of firefighting by the mommy. She said, then you can take care of the crying and hand it over to me. Then I'll dress her up with cute frilly dresses and matching necklaces and tiaras, and would put makeup on her. I couldn't stop my laughter and said, Stacy, babies cry days and nights. Are you saying you're going to bring her to me whenever she cries and then take her back when she stops? She yelled out, yeah, that's right, why not? I couldn't pretend anymore and gave an evil laugh. She said, you're trying to scare me off, don't you? How hard can that be? You have done it. I can also do it. I'm so much better than you. I have so many followers, and I have so much better dressing sense than you. While ranting out this, she closed the live video. She was pissed off at me for grilling her on live video, but she didn't realize what damage it had done to her. She said, we are game for the baby. I smiled with a straight face. She left. My friend recorded the entire live session. I wrote a long post pointing out how Stacy and her mother have been forcing me to have a child and give it to her as a birthday gift. I meticulously pointed out all the red flags as to why Stacy cannot be trusted with a child. Her answers were enough for people to understand what a shit-headed woman she was. I mentioned all the other details about Stacy that was not covered in her answers. I tagged her in that post and released it post-midnight after the princess went to sleep. She would wake up on the next day afternoon, and by the time she untags herself, the post would have reached thousands of people. As expected, my post blew up, thanks to Stacy's followers tagging her in the post. It helped her followers trolled her immensely as to how someone with such a low IQ could even exist on the planet. One of the comments read, forget about being a mother. This woman shouldn't be left free alone on the streets. After this online battle, my mill calls me. Before she could say anything, I said, before you utter a word, let me tell you that you're being recorded, and I'm not going to hesitate to post it publicly. My God. She hung up and never called back. Neither did I get a call from the spoiled princess because I told Mill that I'm going to record all the calls and chats from them, and if they ever try to create trouble at my house, I'm going to record that too. It was so satisfying to put them in their place. My husband and I are still laughing, reading the comments of the trollers on the Sills video. It's just so hilarious. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Before we start, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Now let's continue. My girlfriend of 10 years got pregnant by my younger brother weeks before our marriage and ditched me to marry him. Now, 6 years later, something terrible has happened and my estranged family asks a favor of me. I, 32M, have been living separated from my family for the past 6 years due to a major incident that tore our family apart. I'll try to explain the whole situation as clearly as possible. 6 years ago, I was engaged to my high school sweetheart, Rebecca, who was also 32 now. We had been together since we were 16 and were finally getting married at 26. Everything seemed perfect and I was excited to start our life together. I met Rebecca when we were both 16 in our high school biology class. We were lab partners and I was immediately drawn to her intelligence and sense of humor. For our first date, I saved up my allowance for weeks to take her to a nice restaurant in town. I was so nervous that I accidentally knocked over my water glass, but Rebecca just laughed and helped me clean it up. That's when I knew she was special. Throughout high school, I tried to make every moment with Rebecca memorable. For her 17th birthday, I surprised her with a scavenger hunt around town, leaving clues at all our favorite spots. The final clue led her to our local park where I had set up a picnic with all her favorite foods. I'll never forget how her eyes lit up when she saw it. When we went to different colleges, I was determined to make our long-distance relationship work. Every weekend, I'd make the 3-hour drive to visit her, no matter how much schoolwork I had. I'd bring her care packages during exam weeks, filled with her favorite snacks, stress relief items, and handwritten notes of encouragement. After college, when we both moved back to our hometown, I worked extra shifts at my job to save up for a dream vacation for us. I surprised Rebecca with a 2-week trip to Europe, something she'd always wanted to do. We visited Paris, Rome, and London. In Paris, I arranged a private boat tour on the Seine River at sunset. I can still picture how beautiful she looked with the Eiffel Tower glittering behind her. When Rebecca mentioned she wanted to go back to school for her master's degree, I supported her completely. I took on a second job to help with her tuition and living expenses. I'd stay up late with her, quizzing her for exams and proofreading her papers, even when I had to be up early for work the next day. For our 10th anniversary, I planned a recreation of our first date. I reserved the same table at the same restaurant, wore a similar outfit, and even arranged with the waiter to accidentally spill my water. Rebecca laughed so hard, saying it was perfect. After dinner, I took her to the beach where we had our first kiss and proposed under the stars. Looking back now, it's painful to think about all these memories. I put my heart and soul into our relationship, truly believing we were building a life together. It makes the betrayal sting even more, knowing how much I loved her and how easily she seemed to throw it all away. A few days before our wedding, Rebecca came to me with shocking news. She told me she was pregnant, but the baby wasn't mine. She had been cheating on me with my younger brother, William, for a long time. She had done the math and was certain the baby was his. I was devastated and furious. But what hurt even more was when Rebecca told me she had developed feelings for William and wanted to marry him instead of me. It felt like my whole world was crumbling around me. In my anger and pain, I went to my parents and told them everything. I expected them to be as shocked and upset as I was. But to my surprise, they seemed oddly calm about the whole situation. My parents had always treated William as their golden child, but I never expected this level of betrayal. They told me I should be happy for my brother. My mother was even excited about becoming a grandmother, completely disregarding how I might feel about the situation. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It felt like my entire family had turned against me in an instant. The people who were supposed to love me and support me were telling me to just accept this massive betrayal and act like everything was fine. Unable to cope with the betrayal from not just Rebecca and William, but my parents as well, I made the difficult decision to leave. I packed my bags, moved to a different city, and cut off contact with all of them. That was 6 years ago. In all that time, my father called me a few times, but those conversations were always strained and uncomfortable. My mother, William, and Rebecca never reached out to me at all. I didn't even know the name of William's child, my own nephew. I tried to move on with my life as best I could. I focused on my career, made new friends, and even started dating again, though I found it hard to trust after what happened with Rebecca. Still, I was slowly building a new life for myself away from the pain and betrayal of my past. Then, a few days ago, I got a call out of the blue from my mother. I was surprised to see her name on my phone screen after all this time. When I answered, she sounded upset and told me that William had been in a terrible accident. He was now paralyzed and unable to work or take care of his family. I felt a mix of emotions hearing this news. Part of me was shocked and saddened to hear about William's accident. Despite everything that happened, he was still my brother. But another part of me couldn't help but feel angry that after 6 years of no contact, this was the reason my mother was finally reaching out to me. What she said next made me even angrier. She told me that the family needed my help. Specifically, she wanted me to come back and step in as a father figure for William's child and help Rebecca take care of the family while William recovered. I was furious. After everything that had happened, how could she possibly think this was an appropriate request? I told her absolutely not. I reminded her that Rebecca and William had betrayed me in the worst way possible, and that she and my father had chosen to support them over me. I said I had no obligation to help them now, especially after years of no contact. My mother got upset and accused me of being selfish. She said family should always come first and that I needed to let go of the past. She tried to guilt me by saying William's child needed a father figure and that Rebecca was struggling to manage everything on her own. I stood my ground and refused again. I told her that William and Rebecca made their choice 6 years ago, and now they had to live with the consequences. I said it wasn't my responsibility to step in and play happy families just because things had gotten difficult for them. Before hanging up, I told my mother not to contact me again unless it was to apologize for how they had treated me 6 years ago. I said I might be willing to have a relationship with them again if they acknowledged how much they had hurt me, but I would never step in as a replacement for William or a father figure for his child. After the call ended, I felt a mix of emotions. Part of me felt guilty for turning my back on my family when they needed help, but a larger part of me felt angry and hurt all over again. The wound that had started to heal was now ripped open and all the pain and betrayal came flooding back. I've been struggling with this decision ever since the call. On one hand, I know that William's accident is not his child's fault and I feel bad for the kid growing up without a fully present father. On the other hand, I don't think it's fair for my family to expect me to swoop in and fix everything after they betrayed me and then ignored me for years. Some of my friends think I'm justified in my decision. They say my family made their bed and now they have to lie in it. But others think I'm being too harsh and that I should at least consider helping for the sake of the child. I'm torn about what to do. Part of me wants to maintain the life I've built for myself, free from the drama and pain of my past. But another part wonders if I'm being too stubborn and if there's a way I could help without completely sacrificing my own well-being. So, Reddit, am I correct in refusing to help my brother and his family after he stole my fiancée and got her pregnant? Edit. Wow. Thank you all for your responses and perspectives. I want to address a few common points and provide some additional context. To those asking about my dating life, yes, I've dated since Rebecca, but I haven't had any serious long-term relationships. The betrayal definitely affected my ability to trust, and I've been working on that in therapy. Many have asked if I'm sure the child is William's. Honestly, I don't know for certain. At the time, Rebecca said she was sure based on the timing, but I never saw any proof either way. She chose to leave me for William, so the paternity doesn't change much for me personally. To those saying I should at least visit William in the hospital, I'm considering this. While I'm not ready to forgive him, I do want to know more about his condition and prognosis. A few comments mentioned the possibility of financial help without direct involvement. This is something I hadn't considered before and might be worth exploring. For those curious about my father's calls over the years, they were mostly surface-level conversations. He never apologized or acknowledged the hurt caused, which is why the relationship remained strained. Some asked about other family members. I have a few cousins I'm still in touch with, but they live in different states and weren't closely involved in the situation. A common sentiment is that I don't owe them anything, but helping might bring me peace. I appreciate this perspective and will give it some thought. Thank you all again for your input. This situation is complex and emotionally charged, and reading your comments has given me a lot to think about. I'll update if there are any significant developments. Update. It's been a few weeks since my last post and a lot has happened. I wanted to give you an update on my situation. After my initial refusal to help, my parents didn't give up. My mother called me almost every day, and even my father started reaching out more frequently. They kept pushing me to reconsider my decision, telling me how much William and his family needed my help. At first, I ignored most of their calls and messages, but after weeks of constant contact, I started to feel worn down. A small part of me was curious about William's condition, even though I was still angry about everything that had happened. Finally, after about 3 weeks of this, I decided to visit William in the hospital. I told myself it was just to see how bad his condition really was, not because I was considering helping. When I arrived at the hospital, my stomach was in knots. I hadn't seen any of my family members in person for 6 years, and I wasn't sure how I would react. As I walked into William's room, I saw him lying in the hospital bed. He looked pale and thin, hooked up to various machines. It was a shock to see my once active younger brother in this state. My parents were there too. They looked older than I remembered, with more gray hair and wrinkles. When they saw me, they rushed over to hug me, but I stepped back. I wasn't ready for that level of intimacy yet. Then I saw her, Rebecca. She was standing by William's bedside, looking tired and worried. When our eyes met, a flood of memories hit me. I remembered all the times I had trusted her completely, all the plans we had made for our future together. I thought about how she had been my best friend, my confidant, the person I thought I would spend my life with. And then I remembered how easily she had thrown all of that away, how she had betrayed me in the worst possible way with my own brother. Seeing Rebecca again after all these years brought back all the pain and anger I had worked so hard to move past. I had to resist the urge to turn around and walk right out of the hospital. I didn't speak to Rebecca. Instead, I asked my father about William's condition. He explained that William had been in a car accident and had suffered a spinal cord injury. He was paralyzed from the waist down and would need extensive rehabilitation. The doctors weren't sure if he would ever walk again. As we were talking, my father mentioned something that caught me off guard. He said that they had done a paternity test soon after the child was born, confirming that William was indeed the father. I hadn't known about this test, and it felt like a final confirmation of their betrayal. While we were talking, a young boy of about 5 or 6 came into the room. I realized this must be William and Rebecca's son, my nephew. The boy looked confused and a bit scared by all the hospital equipment. Rebecca introduced him to me as his uncle. I spent a few minutes with the boy, mostly just saying hello and asking him about his favorite toys and games. It was strange to meet this child who was biologically my nephew, but who I had never known existed until recently. After the hospital visit, my mother insisted that I come to their house to talk more. I reluctantly agreed, mostly because I wanted to get this whole situation over with. At the house, my mother launched into a speech about family responsibility and how I needed to step up and help Rebecca and the child while William was recovering. She talked about how overwhelmed Rebecca was, trying to care for William, raise a child, and manage their household on her own. As I listened to her, I felt my anger rising. When she finally paused, I told her exactly how I felt. I said she was being selfish and only thinking about William, just like she always had. I pointed out that in all her calls and during this whole conversation, she hadn't once asked how I was doing or shown any interest in my life over the past 6 years. I told her that it seemed like the only reason she had reached out to me was because she needed something from me, not because she actually cared about rebuilding our relationship. I said it hurt that she seemed more concerned about William's well-being than she ever had been about mine, even after he had betrayed me so badly. My mother tried to defend herself, saying that of course she cared about me, but that William's situation was an emergency. She said that as the healthy brother, I had a responsibility to help. I took a deep breath and told her my final decision. I said that while I felt sympathy for William's condition and for the challenges his family was facing, I couldn't give up my own life and peace of mind to help them. I explained that I had spent years building a new life for myself, working through the pain and betrayal they had caused me, and I wasn't willing to sacrifice all of that progress. I told her that I might be willing to have a relationship with them again in the future, but only if they were willing to acknowledge how much they had hurt me and work on rebuilding trust. I made it clear that this relationship would not involve me acting as a replacement for William or a father figure for his child. My parents were upset with my decision. They called me selfish and said I was abandoning my family when they needed me most, but I stood firm. I told them that they had made their choice 6 years ago when they supported William and Rebecca over me, and now they had to live with the consequences of that decision. Before I left, I told them that I was open to staying in touch and possibly working on our relationship over time, but only if they could respect my boundaries and show genuine interest in my life, not just what I could do for them. As I drove home that evening, I felt a mix of emotions. Part of me felt guilty for not helping more, especially when I thought about William's son growing up with a disabled father. But a larger part of me felt relieved. I had finally stood up for myself and set clear boundaries with my family. I realized that while blood relation is important, it doesn't give anyone the right to mistreat you or take advantage of you. I had spent years healing from their betrayal, and I wasn't willing to reopen those wounds just because they suddenly decided they needed me. In the weeks since that visit, my parents have called a few times. The conversations have been tense, but they seem to be making an effort to ask about my life and not just talk about William. It's a small step, but it gives me hope that maybe over time we can build a healthier relationship. For now, I'm focusing on my own life and well-being. I've started seeing a therapist again to work through the emotions brought up by reconnecting with my family. I'm also throwing myself into my work and spending time with friends who have supported me through all of this. I don't know what the future holds for my relationship with my family, but I feel confident that I made the right decision for myself. I'm open to slowly rebuilding connection, but only on my terms and at a pace I'm comfortable with. Thank you all for your support and advice throughout this difficult situation. It's been a challenging few weeks, but I feel like I finally found some closure and I'm ready to move forward with my life. Now on to the next story. Story 3. Caught my GF cheating on me with my cousin. I kicked her out of our apartment, exposed their affair to all our friends and family, and now she's vanished without a trace. My girlfriend and I had been together for 3 years before my entire world fell apart around me. I thought that she was the one for me, and I even planned on marrying her. However, she cheated on me with my cousin. To begin with, she and I met at a nightclub 3 years ago. She was the hottest woman there, and I didn't think I stood a chance at getting far with her, but I had to try. Surprisingly, she was interested in me, and we went out the next day. We had been together ever since. She moved into my apartment a year and a half after we started dating. Seemed right, and I didn't question if it was too soon or not because I was head over heels in love with her. My cousin, who used to live down south, ended up accepting a job position in New York, where we lived. I was able to talk to my building manager to get a decent apartment set up for him since he couldn't come to the city to look for one himself. I was stoked for him to be close by. We had always been good friends when we were younger, and we often played games online together. I thought it was going to be nice having family close by. Once he was all settled, we would hang out with each other quite often. He would come over to our apartment because I had a nice gaming setup and we would play. He was never shy about letting me know he thought my girlfriend was insanely attractive. He was my cousin, so I never thought he would act on any of his feelings, so I would laugh it off and agree with him. I never noticed anything going on with them while I was around. She wouldn't sit next to him. They wouldn't really even talk much, and they seemed to respect each other's personal space. So a few months after he moved in, I was grabbing coffee with a friend. I thought it was just going to be me and one of my college buddies, but he actually showed up with his new girlfriend. I was a little shocked to see him there with her because she was actually my girlfriend's work friend. We had tried to set them up at a party, but we didn't think they were hitting it off very well. Apparently, they had been keeping things low profile because they didn't want to put any pressure on their relationship. I thought it was so funny that they were together, and I wanted to surprise my girlfriend with that news because I knew she'd love it. I texted her and told her that she should come to the cafe because there was a surprise I wanted her to see. I got a message back shortly after that she couldn't because she was hanging out with her friend. The friend she told me she was hanging out with was the one sitting right across from me at the cafe. Obviously, she was lying about what she was doing, but why she was lying was what I couldn't understand. I ended up lying to my friends and telling them that my girlfriend had a migraine and needed me to bring her some medication. So I left the cafe and went right home. When I got there, she was nowhere to be seen. However, I could see that she had makeup on the bed, and she had clearly tried on a couple of outfits. I was really nervous that something was going on that I didn't know about, and I needed to talk to someone about it. I walked down the hall to talk to my cousin. There was loud music playing in the background, but I knocked on the door for a minute until he heard me. I heard a lot of shuffling around, but he opened the door a moment later. He tried to laugh it off by telling me that he had company and that he would come over later. Again, I had no reason to think that my girlfriend was cheating on me with my cousin, so I didn't assume it was her in there. I didn't assume it was her until I saw a shirt that I bought her for her birthday on the arm of the couch behind my cousin. I played it cool, and I nodded my head and went back to my apartment. As soon as I got there, I looked around for any other signs that she was cheating. I ended up going into her laptop and looking through her Facebook messages with my cousin. Doing that completely broke my heart. I saw that my cousin had reached out to her and asked what it was about me that she liked so much. She told him that she thought I was funny and had a good personality, but he replied, saying that I didn't seem like her type. He told her that he was her type. My girlfriend didn't disagree. They were extremely flirty, and at one point, she messaged him the classic, just got out of the shower message. After that, they sent a couple of suggested pictures with some very sexual messages. Earlier that day, my cousin had messaged her that he couldn't stop thinking about her and that he needed to be with her. He told her to come up with some excuse to go to his apartment, and she did. I knew it was over between my girlfriend and I, and one was going to be cutting my cousin off from my life entirely, but I was definitely going to out their little tryst to everyone I knew. I took screenshots of everything that I saw, sending them to myself so I had it in case my girlfriend tried to lie. Luckily, my name was on the lease, and hers wasn't because she moved into my apartment, so I would at least get to kick her out. She came home a few hours later, and right away, I told her to get out. She was confused, but I told her that I found out about her and my cousin, and that I wanted her out of the apartment or I would file a legal complaint. I left for the night and told her that she had 48 hours to leave. While I was away, she and my cousin had both called me dozens of times, but I ignored every single one of them. While I was gone, I gathered all of my relatives into a group chat, and I told them everything about what happened. Everyone was so disappointed in my cousin for doing what he did. His parents were even in the chat. They all apologized profusely, even though they didn't do anything. Shortly after, I got a bunch of messages from my cousin where he was calling me a coward and telling me that he had members of the family messaging him and telling him that he was a scumbag. I didn't really care, he was a scumbag. My girlfriend and I had a lot of the same friends, so I put all of them in a group chat and told them about what happened as well. They were all completely shocked by what they heard, and they were on my side. While I was talking to them, a couple of the girls in the chat told me that my girlfriend was trying to call them to ask for a place to stay. They felt bad, but they said no because they didn't believe that what she did was right. I went back 2 days later, and my girlfriend was out of the apartment. I had no idea where she'd gone because all of our friends had decided to ghost her. I found out that she ended up staying with my cousin, however, their personalities clashed quite a bit, and he ended up kicking her out after a week. From that point, I have no clue where she went. I guess I learned that you really can't put your trust in just anyone, not even family. Now on to the next story. Story 4. Narcissistic Mill convinced her 11-year-old grandson to lock me in a dark closet as a prank. When my husband refused to help, I called the cops. Me and my husband's family don't have a good history, especially my Mill. A little bit of a backstory. My husband, Kyle, is one of the 2 children in his family. He has always been the golden boy, even though he had an older sister. My mother-in-law, Monica, is a full-blown clinical narcissist. She was the type to demand gifts on my husband's or his sister's birthday, saying that they wouldn't be here without her. My husband has told me previously that while growing up, every time he achieved something, she made it about herself. When I first started dating my husband and coming around his house, Mill was nice as a pie, but her behavior progressively declined as we started to get more serious. She has gotten more and more crazier over the years. It really escalated when we decided to get married 3 years ago. My mill would interfere and make trying to plan our wedding an absolute nightmare. Thankfully, me and my husband had decided right off the bat to pay for it ourselves to hopefully avoid anyone in our fams inserting themselves into the process. Hence, when Mill tried to interfere and change our venue layout of the wedding, I politely declined her suggestions. She complained to my husband, who tried to talk to me and compromise, but I told him that our decision was final. Now, when it came to our wedding, I had always wanted a casual, fun, non-religious wedding and did a mismatched bridal party look from a loose color palette. The only thing I had asked Mill and the rest of my bridesmaids to do, literally, was pick out a dress that was within my color palette and then just run it by me before they purchased it so I would know exactly what I was working with. My mother and the rest of the bridesmaids showed me their options, and I never told them no or asked them to change a thing from what they all picked. Mill never showed me any options. I kept asking for months leading up to the wedding, and she would find some excuse. On the day of my wedding, my Mill showed up in an off-white dress, to everyone's shock. It was a medium-length dress with a transparent chiffon layer and a bolero. She looked triumphant as she smirked at me when she saw my face. I knew then and there that she was going to be a pain in my ass forever. I burst out crying, and my husband immediately asked her to either change or leave the venue. Phil didn't want to drive her back and started to argue with my husband. In the end, to keep the family peace, I let Mill attend our wedding in her dress. I can't even say how embarrassing it was for the guests to notice her dress and be surprised. I ignored her throughout the wedding and didn't speak a single word to her. My husband knew how upset I was and told me to let this issue go, saying that no matter who wore a white dress, I was the bride anyway. It really upset me that he didn't understand how Carl's mother was to wear her dress in a color that no mother should wear to her son's wedding. I decided to forgive her for it, even though she never once apologized to me. Her narcissism didn't just stop there. When we were trying to get pregnant, it was a tough time for us. I had a miscarriage once, so when I found out that I was pregnant again, I was understandably quite nervous. Kyle was super excited to be a dad and understood why we couldn't share the news immediately with our family. He went with me to every doctor's appointment, read parenting books with me, and even set up a cute nursery for our baby. 2 months later, we decided it was time to share the exciting news about my pregnancy with our family. We made sure we crossed the crucial first trimester milestone and were completely certain before spreading the joy to our loved ones. We had invited all our parents, close family, and friends for lunch. They arrived expecting a regular lunch, but upon noticing my growing stomach, their expressions shifted to expressions of joy and amazement. My mother started crying when she saw me and confirmed that I was indeed pregnant. She understood why we had kept the news secret and was overjoyed to be a grandmother soon. She completely understood why we had kept it a secret and expressed her excitement about becoming a grandmother soon. However, Kyle's mother, Monica, had a completely different reaction. Instead of sharing in the joy, she reacted angrily upon learning that we had kept the pregnancy hidden. She felt left out and accused me specifically of intentionally excluding her. Despite my attempts to explain the reason behind our decision, she continued to look pissed and refused to engage with me further. Her disapproval cast a shadow over what should have been a joyful family occasion. Throughout the night, Monica didn't address me at all. She displayed disrespect, not only towards me but also towards my mother, who had always been nothing but kind to her during their previous encounters. Monica remained unresponsive during discussions, buried in her phone while everyone else engaged in the family gathering. It was clear that she was upset, and her discontentment was palpable. She openly expressed to everyone how she had no idea about my pregnancy, making her feel as if she had lost precious time with a grandchild who hadn't even been born yet. My husband and one of his brothers picked up on her frustration. As the tension escalated, I reached a breaking point and decided to step out for a moment to gather myself. My mother, who noticed my distress, came to comfort me until I felt composed enough to return. As the night came to an end, Monica made a deliberate point of saying goodbye to me last. The entire day she had barely exchanged more than a hi with me. Later, when my husband walked them to the car, they ended up having a heated argument which I could hear clearly standing in the foyer. Monica took the opportunity to vent her complaints about me, further escalating the strange situation. Thankfully, all our guests had left by this moment, so it was just me, my parents, Kyle, and his parents. She angrily told him that she couldn't believe that I had the audacity to keep this pregnancy from her, and that I did not consider family at all. My husband calmly let her know that he and I had both decided to wait until we were out of the danger zone, and that everything was fine before sharing the news with everyone. Hearing this, Monica started yelling. This is how their conversation went. Monica, this is our grandchild we're talking about. I deserve to know from the very beginning. As your mother, you should have called me immediately with the news. Kyle, Mom, we just wanted to be cautious before giving the good news. Monica, cautious? I am your mother. You should have trusted me with this. I know this is all her fault. You let her dictate whatever she wants. Grow a pair. Kyle's face got red in embarrassment, and he looked at his mother miserably as she kept yelling more. I was unaware of the tears streaming down my face. The sharpness of her words had left me hurt and bewildered. I tried to intervene, but my mother stopped me by whispering to me that if I said anything right now, Monica would find a way to jump at me. This was absolutely true because I was sure Monica just wanted to fight with me, but I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. I kept my mouth shut. My mill told him that he should open his eyes to see the truth as he was letting me control everything. And as his mother, she should have been the first to know if her son was having a child. Eventually, my Phil urged my mill to calm down and drove her away. As you can imagine, this wasn't the last time she acted this way. Her list of blowing things out of proportion and acting entitled has been endless. Here is a list of other things. She tried to go behind my back and teach our baby to call her Ma instead of Grandma, which absolutely infuriated me. She will beg me to babysit our child and will then make sure that everyone knows how much she helps us around and how we always need her. When I had a few health issues after pregnancy, she would tell me that I needed to be a better mother to her grandbaby and should get over myself. Due to all these incidents above and many more, my relationship with my mill has never been great, but I continue to tolerate her for the sake of my husband. Now, coming on to what happened. My mill and Phil recently moved into a new place. They had been inviting us to check it out, but we were quite busy, so we couldn't meet. Kyle wanted me to go alone with our child, Debbie, but I was hesitant. He urged me to go so that his mother would stop calling him and asking him to check her new place out. Begrudgingly, I agreed to go during the weekend. Debbie had a friend's birthday party to attend that weekend, so I dropped her off and asked my mother to pick her up, as Debbie loves spending time with her grandparents. It was a sunny Friday afternoon when I went to check out my in-laws' new place. The property was massive, and it looked like my father-in-law had spent a lot of money on it for his retirement. The house was huge and had a mix of modern and classic styles. The yard was really nice, with lots of green plants and flowers that smelled great. When I got there and rang the doorbell, my mother-in-law opened the door. Perhaps thinking it was Kyle, she looked excited at first, but then she saw it was just me. She looked confused and asked me where Kyle and Debbie were. I told her that Kyle had an appointment and Debbie had to attend her friend's birthday. This really upset her, and she started complaining about how selfish we all were to not find any time to spend with her. I tried to change the topic awkwardly by telling her that I was there and that I would love to check out her new place. She smiled a bit sadly and invited me inside. The inside of the house was just as fancy. The entrance had high ceilings, and everything was nicely decorated. My sister-in-law, Sil, Haley, and her 11-year-old son, Jake, were there too. I gave them a friendly greeting. Sil, much like her mom, never seemed to be a fan of mine. I couldn't figure out if it was a personal issue or just to make her mom happy, but she rarely engaged with me. Mill informed me that Phil was out with his friends, so she had invited Haley and her son over to spend some quality time with them. I nodded, trying to be polite, and attempted to strike up a conversation with Sil's son by asking how school was going for him. While we were discussing the boys' school, Mill suddenly shifted the conversation to her recent clothing purchases. She mentioned how she had wanted me to come over so I could give her some advice on her new wardrobe. This caught me off guard because she never sought my advice on anything before. I tried to hide my surprise and responded with a polite, "Oh, that's nice. I'd be happy to help." It felt a bit strange, given our history, but I decided to see the positive side and embrace the opportunity to bond over something as simple as fashion. She seemed pleased with my response and led the way towards what she proudly referred to as her pride and joy, the newly built walk-in closet. As we approached the impressive display of clothes, shoes, and accessories, I couldn't help but appreciate the lavish collection she had amassed. While I was admiring the outfits, Mill eagerly began showing me different pieces, asking for my opinion on colors, styles, and accessories. It was a bit surreal, given our rocky history, but I tried my best to be helpful and provide thoughtful suggestions. My Mill then encouraged me to look through her closet and that she would be right back. I nodded and was checking out her new clothes when I heard the pattering of feet running behind me. Before I could even look back, with mischievous laughter, Sill's son, Jake, gave me a push, causing me to stumble into the closet, and swiftly locked the door behind me. I fell face first into the closet. My head and teeth hurt with the impact. I couldn't comprehend at first what had just happened. The initial shock gave way to a sense of confinement and panic as I realized that Jake had turned off the light switch, which was outside the closet door, and had locked me in. I was enveloped in darkness and felt claustrophobic, shocked, and terrified. I began banging on the closet door, desperately calling out to Mill and Sill for help. However, my pleas seemed to fall on deaf ears, or perhaps they were conveniently ignoring my distress. I fumbled for my phone, hastily switching on my phone's flashlight. Anxiety crept in as I noticed my dwindling battery, making me worry that my phone might die before I could escape the confined closet. You see, I've had an irrational fear of darkness ever since I was a child. I had locked myself by mistake in my grandmother's closet while playing hide and seek with her, and my grandmother, who was hard of hearing given her age, had taken an agonizing hour to finally find me stuck in the closet, crying and screaming. The sheer terror of that moment lingered, leaving me with an irrational fear that surfaced whenever I found myself enveloped in darkness. I continuously attempted to reach out to Mill and Sill for assistance. Unfortunately, my calls went unanswered, and a growing sense of isolation enveloped me. I was confused as to why they wouldn't pick up my calls, even though I could hear them laughing loudly downstairs. In a last-ditch effort, I decided to dial my husband's number in desperation. After a few rings, he casually answered. Desperation in my voice, I explained the dire situation. Kyle, thank goodness you picked up. Something terrible has happened, and I need your help. Kyle, seemingly unfazed, inquired about what was going on. I proceeded to recount the incident. Your nephew just pushed me and locked me inside the closet at your mom's place. He has switched off the lights. I've been banging on the door, but no one has come to rescue me. You know how terrified I am of dark spaces. Kyle, less sympathetic, retorted, Are you seriously calling me in the middle of my work for this? This isn't even an emergency. Just call my mother, who is inside the house, instead of calling me. Frustrated, I replied that I did call his mother and his sister several times, but they were not picking up. I explained how I didn't have a lot of charge on my phone to begin with, and switching on my phone's flashlight was also draining my battery more. I begged him to come over and help me, as he knew how scared I was of the darkness. I had talked to him at length about this. Kyle, unmoved by what I had just told him, stated, Locked in a closet? Seriously? No, I can't come over as I'm busy right now, so find someone else to help you. To my dismay, he nonchalantly dismissed my continued plea for help and cut the call short. I was stunned by his reaction. The growing panic within me pushed me to continue banging on the closet door, desperately calling Mill and Sill, but their phones remained stubbornly silent. Feeling trapped and helpless, I decided to call my father-in-law, Phil, since he was now the only person left who I could call. I knew he had been out with his friends, but I had no one else to turn to. The phone rang, and I held my breath, hoping he would answer. He picked up, and I nervously explained the situation, revealing that Jake had locked me in the closet, and despite my attempts to reach out to others, no one was responding. He immediately assured me that he would make his way back home as quickly as possible, and was shocked that Mill and Sill couldn't hear me all this while. After what felt like an eternity, I heard voices outside. I could recognize my Phil yelling something, and he seemed to be directing someone to unlock the closet door. My anxiety began to subside as I realized help was finally on its way. The door creaked open, and I squinted against the sudden light. Sil and Phil stood there wearing a mix of concern and frustration on their faces. I came out of the closet, a bit disoriented but grateful for the release from that confined space. Phil asked Mill why I was locked in her closet, and she started to feign innocence. I recounted the incident to everyone, detailing how Jake had pushed me into the closet and locked it. However, both Mill and Sil scoffed at my words, dismissing them entirely. They insisted that Jake would never do something like that. Frustrated and angry, I questioned why they hadn't come to check on me or respond to my banging on the door. Their excuse was that they were in the backyard where Mill was showing Haley and Jake her new rose garden. Jake was peeking from the door, so I directed my anger at him and started to question him about why he would lock me inside. But Sil interrupted me. She told me that her son would never do such a thing and started to claim that I must have closed the door myself and the key must have fallen out. Their blatant lies left me beside myself with frustration and disbelief, as it still didn't explain how the lights got turned off. Then my Phil tried to calm me down, and I knew that regardless of what I said, Mill and Sil would continue to defend each other. Defeated and hurt, I returned home. I called my mother on my way, apologizing that I couldn't come and pick Debbie up for the night, and she might have to stay over at their place. I was trembling with shock, and my mother knew that something was wrong, but I did not have the energy to tell her at the moment what had just happened. I reached home and waited for my husband to return so I could confront him about what his family had done to me. However, to my disbelief, when I recounted the incident to him during dinner, he berated me for overreacting and started accusing me of being childish. He insisted that this was a ridiculous accusation to make about his family. He refused to believe that his nephew could have locked me inside the closet and his mother and sister had knowingly refused to help me. He continued to justify his action on why he couldn't come to help me, saying that he wasn't at my beck and call, so I needed to be more understanding with everyone. Gaslighting me, I started to doubt myself. In an attempt to avoid further conflict, I chose not to argue with him any further. I retreated to bed, enveloped by a profound loneliness, struggling to understand what had happened. The weight of the incident pressed heavily on my chest, and the feeling of being dismissed and misunderstood by my husband lingered. I knew that what had happened to me wasn't merely a prank. It was intentional, calculated, and deeply humiliating since everyone pretty much had an idea that I was afraid of the dark. The following day, while I was at home grappling with the emotional aftermath of the previous day's ordeal, I received a TikTok link from my cousin. She asked if the video featured me. Opening the link, I was quickly horrified to see that my nephew, Jake, had recorded the entire incident and shamelessly posted it for his followers on TikTok. He was clearly telling his followers how he wanted to prank me, and locking me inside the dark closet was the perfect plan. He hid the camera in a corner and then ran to push me inside. My blood boiled in anger. Seeing his laughter infuriated me. I shared the video in our family chat, demanding that everyone now owe me an apology, since I had proof. I also wrote to Sil that she needed to get Jake to delete the video immediately. Instead of acknowledging the severity of the situation, Mill brushed it off and instead told me that this was really funny to watch. She said that she had not seen anything more hilarious than this and claimed that boys will be boys. Sil joined in with her and insisted that I shouldn't be bothered by the video and just let this go, as Jake had played a harmless prank on me anyway. I warned them that if Jake didn't remove this video, I would be going the legal way. Mill replied back, saying that I was just being too much right now and that I needed to chill out and learn to be a part of the family. Fed up with their lack of empathy, I decided to take matters into my own hands and teach them all a lesson. I called the cops immediately and provided them with the evidence of the incident. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, they agreed to give Sil a visit to question her about why her 11-year-old child had a TikTok account and was posting such prank videos by pushing people into closets. Later, Sil called me angrily, asking if I seriously had the audacity to file a complaint against her. I told her that I had and that I was willing to take this to court. She started yelling at me some more, but I quickly told her that I was recording the conversation and would be happy to give it to my lawyer. She quickly shut up after that. So, IDA for teaching my husband's family a lesson for locking me inside the closet for over an hour. Update 1. In just a few hours, I have received thousands of comments, and I'm glad to see that a majority of you understand why I decided to involve the police. I have been receiving multiple calls from my in-laws, who are asking me to withdraw my statement to the police. No official case has been filed yet, as my nephew is still a child, so the police are investigating to assess and determine the appropriate course of action. My husband, who had no idea about this, erupted when he came back from work. He had tried calling me during the day, but I had been busy with the police. But when he was back, I knew we were going to have this conversation. Kyle is convinced that what I have done has totally destroyed the family and is saying that I shouldn't be so childish as to overreact over such harmless things. He continues to believe that Jake is just a child, hence he shouldn't be punished for this. I have talked with my parents and my sister about this. My family knows about my phobia for dark spaces. Hence, they are shocked that no one came to rescue me and, more importantly, that my husband isn't advocating for me. My dad had a strong word with my husband, telling him that if I had called him for help while stuck in the dark closet, then it should have been his responsibility to either come to help me or immediately call his parents to get me out. The fact that he didn't do either of these things doesn't sit right with me or my family. Thanks to everyone's comments, I can see that my husband and his family's dismissive attitude has been going on for a long time, and I have been blind to it. I will continue to update you when there is any further development. Update 2. It's been a week since my last update, and there has been a major development. You see, Syl's husband, Vic, who was out of town, recently returned, and he found out about what had happened between me and Jake. He completely lost it and asked my nephew to immediately take down the video and apologize to me personally. When Syl tried to defend her son's actions, Vic threatened to kick him out if he ever disrespected others like that. That this was all told to me by Vic when he visited me. I agreed to meet up in the hopes that I could get to the bottom of this incident. Vic came to our place with Jake, who looked sad, as if he had probably been scolded the entire time. Vic looked at him sternly as Jake immediately started to apologize to me as soon as we sat down to talk. He then started telling me that even though he did push me into the closet, it wasn't entirely his fault. I looked at him curiously, and so did Vic. Jake went on to reveal that he would talk to Mill about his TikTok account, as well as forward her several prank videos which his friends would play on other people. Once she started to tell him how it would be a good idea to try it on someone in real life, Jake told her that he didn't think it was a good idea to try it on his family members, but Mill urged him, saying that because I wasn't technically his family since I was just married to my husband, and that meant he could definitely try out those pranks on me and not feel guilty about it. I was shocked to hear this. Vic asked Jake if he was lying and trying to dodge responsibility, as this was a huge accusation to make, but Jake started weeping, telling us that we were welcome to check his phone, where he and Mill did indeed have a conversation regarding this. He showed us those chats, and I was absolutely horrified and disgusted for someone her age to incite a child to engage in such actions simply because she disliked me was truly appalling. Having heard enough, I promptly saved those screenshots to my phone and emphatically advised Jake against following her suggestions, emphasizing that it was the wrong course of action. Jake nodded solemnly. Vic, equally taken aback, expressed his dismay, stating how sickening it was, making him reconsider allowing his child to be around my mother-in-law. Understandably, I nodded as he continued expressing regret for not being present to prevent Jake's actions that day. He urged me to not go through with the case and retract my statement with the police, since Jake had spoken the truth. Vic was clearly afraid of the impact this would have on his child's life. I assured them that I would discuss the matter with my lawyer and the police on the condition that Jake never uploaded the video again or retained a copy of it. Jake assured me that he had indeed deleted the video and that he had no copy of it remaining. Since this conversation with Vic and Jake, I have started questioning my entire relationship with Mill. It's pretty clear now that she was behind the attack and encouraged a child to do her dirty deed so that she could get away with it. I can't allow myself to be around her ever again, as I don't know what else she might do to me if she already dislikes me this much. Update 3. Hello guys. It's been 4 months since my last update. I have moved out of my husband's place, and I am currently staying with my parents. As updated previously, my evil Mill was behind everything. When I confronted her about it, she refused to accept her mistakes. Even after I showed her the screenshots, she tried to accuse my nephew, saying that he must have manipulated them and photoshopped it. Her lies quickly fell apart once I threatened that I would pursue this legally if she didn't admit her mistakes. She then begrudgingly admitted that she had pre-planned this with my nephew, and when she saw that I had come alone to visit her, she thought this would be the perfect time to play the prank on me. She continued to say how Sil was in on it too, and that they had enjoyed hearing my scream for help. She begged me to not pursue this further, saying that she would never do this to me again. Fortunately for me, I had recorded our entire conversation, so I simply ended the call with her and forwarded the voice recording to our group chat so that everyone could hear what Mill had admitted. I sent a text to Sil, saying that I had never expected her to go so low and that I hope her son would turn out to be a better human being than her. As for my husband, our relationship just became worse and worse every day. Even with the screenshots and voice recording of his own mother admitting her mistake, my husband never once apologized to me for what his family had put me through. I think seeing my family rallying behind me really made me understand that this was not me overreacting and that what had happened to me was, in fact, a big deal. Although I did decide to not take any legal action, I didn't want to forgive and forget what the family had done to me. There was no going back after this, and with my husband continuing to support them, there was nothing left for me to fight for. I tried to save my marriage, but when your own partner supports his mother's evil actions regardless of your feelings, then you start to slowly realize that you deserve better than this. I moved out so that we could eventually start our divorce proceedings. He wasn't even remotely surprised about this and didn't fight me when I announced to him that I wanted a divorce. I won't lie about this, as it has been extremely hard to go through this. I genuinely loved my husband and thought I would grow old with him, but these last few months have been eye-opening, and I deserve to put myself first. I am really glad that everyone in the comment section and my family made me see the truth about my husband and his family. Now on to the next story. Story 5. My fiancé snapped and put both of our lives in danger. I'm unsure on what to do next. My fiancé and I have been together 3 years and living together too. He's definitely a hothead. There's been a problem in the past, but he's a wonderful partner otherwise. He cooks, I clean, we both work, and we're best friends. We spend all our spare time together going on road trips, trying new foods, or just hanging out. He has in the past lost it over small things, followed someone home twice over driving, and yelled at them. He's an angry driver in general. He thinks no one can drive and is often speeding through traffic. His angry driving is an everyday occurrence. I let him drive because it's not worth the stress if I drive because he doesn't like it. He punched a hole in a closet door after a stressful day at work, and I sarcastically replied to his mood. He immediately apologized when he calmed down the next day, but it scared me at the time. This was a year ago. His temper is an everyday thing, but it's never directed at me. He also used to tell me to pack my things and F off if we were arguing. I'm definitely a calm, let's talk this out person. He's an I don't want to talk about it person. He often feels attacked, and it's something we had to work through. He's much better now. He tried anger management but said it wasn't working with his work schedule. His communication is much better. Apart from that, he's an affectionate goofball who treats me like a queen. He would do anything for me. I just have to ask. It's like a different person takes over. Oh, to the incident. We were going on a holiday this week, a 12-hour road trip, and we decided to leave at 3 a.m. He said he didn't sleep well and I annoyed him because I wasn't ready quick enough. I forgot some things and I admit that I took too long, and we left late. We stopped an hour later to grab a quick service station meat pie. I don't really remember the conversation leading up to this. I don't even know if we were arguing. All I know is his meat pie leaked on his shirt. He swore and ripped his shirt down the middle like the Hulk and threw it out the window. He proceeded to speed and had the angriest look on his face. I was scared. It was a dark back road, and I could see he was doing 140 kilometers, about 90 miles per hour to my US people. I told him I was scared and to stop, and he ignored me. I told him to please calm down and stop. Suddenly, he slammed on the brakes and all-out things in the back flew forward. He turned to look at me and said, "There, before taking off again, only faster, doing 160 kilometers, about 100 miles per hour. I sat there terrified to speak up again and that we would hit something. He stopped not long after and told me to drive because he was going to sleep. He woke up 2 hours later and didn't say anything about it. It was an hour or so after he woke up he said, "Sorry about before, I was really tired. I'm in shock." He doesn't seem to think it was a huge deal. It's been 2 days and we've just moved on from it. He said nothing happened and he knows how to control a vehicle, and why would he put himself in danger? I just need some advice. I'm starting to rethink this whole relationship based off this incident because I'm scared to tell my friends because they will hold judgments on him. Update 1. I'm so completely overwhelmed by the response from this group. I never thought I'd receive so many helpful and worried comments. I have 4 more days of this trip, and since so many are telling me to be careful, I am not going to do anything until I get home. You've all shown me it's time to tell my sister and brother what's going on. They live in the same city. Thank you again for all your help. I feel so rattled. I've never once thought it was abuse. I just thought he needed help and support. Second update, 2 months later. Thank you to everyone who commented on my previous post. It's been a while since my original post, and a lot has happened. The end of the relationship was nothing short of a soap opera. I spent nights in bed next to him on our holiday reading Lundy Bank's book, and I was floored. All the comments were so eye-opening, even if I didn't want to believe it was that serious. So many things were hitting home, so many things I didn't consider abuse, but these were things I wasn't telling friends or family about. I was protecting him from anyone knowing what he was really like. A part of the book referenced cheating and abusers as one archetype that matched a lot of my partner's attributes. I thought I was crazy, but over a week after we got home from our holiday, he got home from work. We had dinner and he went to shower, so I checked his phone. I repeated this for quite a few nights, gathering evidence. He has been cheating on me, lots of different women over the last 3 years, and currently one woman who knows all about me and likes to talk about how awful I am with him. A lot of things he thought he deleted that Messenger archived. I eventually confronted him one of those nights when he was coming to bed, and he told me he was too tired to talk about it and that I invaded his privacy and that they were just friends. I was so angry I pushed it in terms of keeping the conversation going, not physically. He said he wanted to sleep, and I said if I wasn't getting any sleep, he wasn't either. He snapped. He punched a hole in the wall. He broke our dresser. It's destroyed. He went into the kitchen and smashed other things. It was terrifying. I was begging him to stop. He then said I was lucky something of his wasn't broken. I said, why, what does that mean? He said he would have unived me more graphic, but I'm not sure I can post that here. I got my things and snuck to my car and went to a friend's. He called me and said not to bother coming home. I wasn't, why would I? The next day he said it was all my fault because I wouldn't let him walk away, that I was and ruined everything, that I should have let him sleep and waited until the morning. I called my brothers and said I needed to get my things. I decided it wasn't a good idea for them to come yet because I think they would have escalated the situation as they were angry too. I took my sister and friend and had them wait in the car until I was sure it was safe. He wasn't meant to be home but was. They said I had 5 minutes until they were coming in. I told him I'd come to get my things. He got emotional and said he never wanted me to see that side of him. I said we were done, and he got angry again and chased me into the garage, throwing pillows at me. He said I would regret not fighting for this, and I asked him what I was fighting for because this wasn't how you treat someone you love. He collapsed into a crying mess and said he loved me too much and needed me, that he'd been an idiot and ruined it all. He said I could take what I wanted, that he would speak to me tomorrow when we've both slept. He got upset when my friend and sister came inside because he didn't know they knew. I took the opportunity to get clothes, and my brothers returned for my things 2 days after. He sobbed on the phone to me to reconsider, that he wasn't getting attention from me and did the wrong thing, that he's really stressed, and it all came to a head. He also told me this would happen to me again and the devil I knew was better than any other. He was begging me to come home. I cut contact. 3 weeks later, he's posting pictures with one of the other women and in a relationship with her. I'm just floored by the turn in events. Thank you to everyone who commented. This man was an abuser, and writing here saved me. Please don't date angry men. Please realize if there's physical violence of any kind, they're capable of worse. The cheating was a bullet I didn't see coming. I never suspected him of that, ever, in the whole 3 years, and I'm extremely embarrassed of being replaced so easily and being fooled so easily. I'm living with my brother. My self-esteem is in the toilet, and I guess I'm starting my life over again now. Now on to the next story. Story 6. Sister disappears for years, then breaks into parents' house to steal inheritance after dad passes away and leaves property to other daughter. And Will. I 33F have been going through a lot these days. I recently lost my dad. I have an ailing mom who has been recently diagnosed with a heart problem. I'm a single mom of a 3-year-old toddler. My husband found solace and his colleague when I was pregnant. I'm not only dealing with all this emotionally, but also financially. Though my ex-husband provides child support, it covers only the basic requirements of play school fees and his food. You know how toddlers need a lot more than these. Their never-ending demands for toys, outings, and their endless cravings for ice creams and candies. Cost bombs. Amidst all these, I'm facing the emotional turmoil of losing my backbone, my dad, a few months ago, and now my mom is diagnosed with heart disease. I don't have anyone else to lean on for my emotional support. A friend suggested this place to vent out, so kindly don't mind if I just ramble my heart out. I was still dealing with all this turmoil somehow, but my sister thinks my problem is not enough and creates a ruckus in my life. My elder sister, I'll call her Karen, 38F, has been out of the family dynamics for the last 15 years. She left the house for her college, and since then, she has been in limited contact with all of us. She got a job in the downtown and then married someone there. She didn't even introduce her fiancé to our parents. My parents and I were just invited to the wedding as a guest. Even at the wedding, she barely spoke to us. She was all busy talking to her friends and in-laws. For the brief moment when she spoke to us, it was all about how rich and classy her in-laws were. That's it. I think it's been 10 years of her marriage, and she has hardly checked upon us. She never brought her husband to our house. When she was pregnant with her first daughter, we all were so happy for her. We wanted to visit her, but she said she was busy. When her daughter was born, she informed us after 10 days as a formality to attend her baptism. My parents were upset, but they still attended the ceremony. After all, she's their first granddaughter. I didn't go at that time, and since then, she has made an opinion about me that it was egoistic. It wasn't ego at all. She never loved me. She never treated me like a sister. I was no more than just a stranger to her. She was always so engrossed in her life that she never treated us as a family. We're only a place for her to vent out. After her marriage, whenever she called Mom, it was always to rant about her new house, new car, and stuff like that. Earlier, it was her work, like she was always busy at the office. During her initial years of marriage, Mom invited her with her husband on several occasions, but she always gave the reason they were busy. But they didn't seem busy on social media. You could see their party pictures on almost all weekends. Once I said this, she was like, "Well, we party at our house or at places close to our house. You guys live in the countryside." I said it was just a 2-hour drive. She said, "Yeah, but 2 hours is long for us busy people." Sure. We stopped inviting her again. After her kids, my parents tried to reconcile the bond for the sake of their grandchildren. They asked her to visit with her children, but she never turned up. It was always like, my children would get sick in the 2-hour drive. It's dusty there, and whatnot. We let her be and didn't bother her. Dad was ill for a long time, but she barely visited him. Mom asked her several times in the last few years to visit Dad, but she always had an excuse up her sleeves. Even during his last days, Dad expressed his wish to have one meal together with all of us as a family. She said she would come, but at the last moment she ditched. Now, when Dad is gone and she got to know that he left a substantial inheritance for us, she is behind us for the property division. Okay, before that, when Dad was hospitalized for the last time, the doctor said that it was almost time. I called all my close uncles, aunts, and family members, and also my sister. Most of the people were able to make it and speak to Dad for the final time, but his own daughter arrived the next day after Dad was gone. It is unimaginable how disappointed my father would have been in his last moment. When she arrived and saw that Dad was gone and we were surrounded by friends and relatives, she pulled up the act. She was crying and mourning and faking over the loss, but in real, all of us knew that it was all fake. I wanted to shut her up and throw her out of the house, but no matter what, she was Dad's daughter, and I can't do anything about it. Immediately after the funeral, she was about to leave when she saw the lawyer coming. She smirked and said, "Oh, did Dad have anything substantial to make a will for?" That was such a disgusting comment. Dad wasn't rich. He earned decent, but he gave everything he could within his means. And besides, our parents gave us a happy childhood and happy home. But my sister always had a thing for money. Growing up, I've always seen her cribbing about money problems. She always used to compare our lifestyle to the ones of the rich kids. She always wanted what her rich friends had. After completing school, she was adamant about studying in a city college and not staying in the town anymore. Our parents tried to make her understand the money problem, but she was ready to run away if they didn't agree. Dad had to mortgage his farmland to provide for her college fees and stay. It took him many years and several compromises to pay off his debts. I'm not giving these details to portray her as any villain. She's exactly what I'm saying and even more. If I have to ramble about her selfishness, this post would become a book. The lawyer sat us down and read the will. The house goes to Mom, and it would be on her whom she gave it at her will. Dad had some $100,000 savings, which goes to Karen, and I get the farmland and the windmill. Karen was shocked at this. She was like, "Wasn't that farmland sold off? And when did Dad get into the windmill thing?" The lawyer gave a strange look at her ignorance. Mom gestured at her to discuss these matters after the will reading session, but she insisted on getting the details right away. Mom requested the lawyer to excuse us. Karen cried foul play, that Dad was unfair in his property division. She ranted about how she was never kept in the loop about Dad's business investment. The way she was ranting at Mom, I wanted to give it back to her, but that would mean she attacking me directly. She clearly had a problem with Dad's substantial property coming to me. Not that I was scared of her, but a face-off with her was the last thing I wanted to do on my dad's funeral day. Mom tried to explain to her about the farmland and the windmill thing, but she was not letting her speak. Mom lost her cool and shouted at her that she was the one who had cut down the communication with us. And now she can't blame us for not filling her with our life updates. No matter how hard Mom tried to make her understand, she kept saying that Mom and Dad were biased towards me. She went so far as to say that I was leeching on my parents for their money because I had no husband and a low-paying teaching job at a community school. I felt so sick and disgusted at her mean comments and couldn't hold back myself. I told her, if there's anyone who's selfish here, it is she. She was the one who threw Dad into a knee debt, and it took him years to recover. In return, she never checked on him and didn't even visit him during his last days. She was partially right about selling the farmland. Dad had mortgaged the land for her college fees, and for many years he was unable to pay off the loan. When she started earning well, Dad asked her to contribute to the loan EMI, but she denied it and said as a father he should bear that. Dad had defaulted on a few EMIs, and the situation got so severe that Dad was on the verge of paying off the loan by selling the farmland. Mom called Karen several times asking for help, but she denied it, saying she was not earning enough to contribute, and she was like, "Sell off the land, what good it is given until now." Just at the right time, Dad got help from his friend who saved us the farmland. Dad repaid his friend eventually. I was also affected by this crisis. You see, I had started working from a very early age. I took up odd jobs during my time off from school, working at orchards and farms on an hourly basis. By the time I graduated from school, I had enough savings to bear my fee for college. But with this crisis kicking in, I had to let go of my savings for the household expenses. Of course, I cannot starve and let my parents starve and use that money to go to college. I had to drop for a couple of years until our finances stabilized. That's when I joined a daycare where I continued to work during my college, and after college I joined a community school. I think 5 to 6 years back, there was a government windmill project introduced in our locality for the farmers. They helped us install the windmill on our land, and in return the government paid us rent for using our land, and we could sell off the power generated from it. In exchange, we had to take care of the maintenance and run it. Dad's farmland was also benefited through the scheme that helped Dad bounce back his financial status. Karen was not happy with the will because she knew the revenue generated through windmills and the farm, and she just couldn't bear to see that Dad had willed the meteor once to me. She just stormed out of the house threatening me and Mom that she would sue us for forging Dad's will. Since then, she has been threatening all of us, including the lawyer, that she would file a forgery case against all of us. We know her allegations are not true, but our concern is that if she files for a case and until the case is settled, the work would halt and rip us off of our livelihood. Though I work at the school, Mom is dependent on the money generated through the farm. Also, we don't have enough money to fight a court case. Mom has been stressing a lot over this, and in her recent checkup, she is diagnosed with a heart problem. Sorry for rambling on this page, but I really need to vent out. Update 1. I cannot thank you guys enough for the love and support I got on my post. Honestly, I didn't expect it to blow up. I was just here to ventilate because I had no one to share my misery in such detail. So, 2 months passed since Dad's demise, and we were living in constant fear of falsely getting framed by Karen. Meanwhile, Dad's lawyer suggested that we start the paperwork for the name transfer. We went ahead with his suggestion. One night, I got an emergency call from Mom. Her voice was trembling. She asked me to immediately come home. I asked her if she was fine. She said yes, but asked me to come over immediately. I got scared, honestly. I thought it was her health because she was breathing heavily. I couldn't leave my son alone at night. I tucked into the backside of the car while he was still asleep and drove off. I reached Mom's house to find neighbors gathered around, police sirens echoing in the neighborhood, and the house was guarded with barricades. I rushed inside crying. I thought something happened to my mom, but I found her on the front porch, and one of the cops pacified her. I hugged her tightly. I informed the cops about my mom's heart problems and that she needed some time to calm down before she could give the statement. The cops went to take the statement from the neighbors. Then I got to know the entire story. It was so that my sister had broken into the house from the backyard when Mom was asleep. Mom had fallen asleep on the couch while watching TV. She was woken up by someone's footsteps going into her room with a flickering torch light. She thought there's a burglar at the house. She pretended to be asleep and didn't move. When she was sure that the burglar was inside the room, Mom swiftly went outside the house and alerted the neighbor, who called the cops. The neighbor also bolted the house from outside to trap the burglar inside the house. When the cops arrived and unlocked the door, they found my sister trying to escape through the back door. When she saw the cops, she pretended that she was just walking in the garden. She was like, "It's my mom's house, and I was just walking on the lawn." Now, Mom was in a dilemma whether to report Karen or not. Karen was detained inside the bedroom. Mom and I went to speak to her. She said she was there to meet Mom, but it was evident that she was searching for something in the closet because it was all messed up. I wanted Mom to report, but then it was her choice. Mom told the cops that she didn't want to report. They still took Karen's details and warned her not to sneak inside the house again. They were suspicious of her because neighbors confirmed her sneaking. After the cops were gone, we asked her again. She was like, "You guys have forged Dad's will. How could you get everything, and I just get a peanut of $100,000. But she couldn't find the papers in the closet. Thank God it was with our lawyer for the paperwork. We didn't tell her where the will was. She asked Mom about it, and Mom said it was none of her business. She looked at me and said, "Then it must be at this bitch's house. She's the one who manipulated you both emotionally and took my share of the property." I wanted to smack her head, but before I could say anything, Mom yelled at her for her language and reminded her that it was she who had cut off all of us from her lives, and now she has to suffer it. It went on for an hour where Mom spoke out everything she had in her heart. Karen tried to be defensive, but Mom didn't let her overpower. When she had nothing else to say, she insisted Mom give the house to her as fair play. Mom asked her to leave the house, but she was adamant in her demands and asked Mom to promise that she would give the house to her because Dad already gave me enough. My son woke up and I headed home, but before leaving, I dared Karen not to even think of breaking into my house because I would not shy away from reporting her and getting her arrested. She was calling me all sorts of names, but I didn't give in to her provocations and left. She even followed me outside the house, cursing me on top of her voice. She stopped when someone from the neighborhood yelled from their window, threatening to call the cops at her. The next morning, I called Mom to check on her. Mom said that after I left, Karen tried to emotionally manipulate Mom. She was sobbing and complaining about how my parents always loved me and favored me more than her, and that's why she left the town and settled in the city. She insisted Mom promised that she would give her the house. Mom said she didn't commit anything but is thinking of creating a will right away to avoid any conflict in the future. She didn't tell me her decision as to whom she would give the house, and I didn't ask her either. I was happy and satisfied with whatever Dad left for me. I'm not sure why Karen has not sued us when she was threatening us so aggressively. Not sure though, I guess she doesn't have the required paper to proceed. Meanwhile, I followed up with a lawyer, and he said the property would be transferred to my name by next month. I'll make an update after that, if possible. Thanks for bearing with me. Appreciate all the love. Edit to add. A lot of you commented on why was the will kept in the closet and not in a bank locker. We live in the countryside with a safe, close-knit community. Unlike the city people, we never had any records of severe crimes or even thieves breaking into the house. So we never had any necessity of a bank locker. I know it might sound strange for the city people, but this is a norm in a countryside culture. Update 2. Thanks to everyone who has been regularly checking on me. I reply to everyone on chats and comments, but I was just not getting the time to make a detailed update. I just had a lot to settle, and all of it took a while, but overall, life has been better. Without getting into a lot of details, let me give a quick rundown of what happened. So, after my last update, it took another 4 to 5 weeks for the ownership of the farm and windmill to be transferred to my name. Dad had a working agreement with all the workmen of his field and the windmill. All of it had to be updated. I took the time to learn how these things work. My mother helped me through it. She used to assist Dad, and she knew every detail about it. I asked Mom to take care of both the business until she wanted and keep the profit for herself. We made an agreement around it so that Karen doesn't create a problem in the future. Amidst all these, Mom got a letter of intimation from Karen's husband where he accused Karen of running away with their ancestral heirloom jewelry and some $1,000 cash. Mom called him and got to know that Karen was into gambling and lost a lot of her husband's money. When her husband denied her giving any further money, she got into debt, and now she ran away with cash and their ancestral jewelry. Mom asked him about her job, and he said she left her job long ago after her first kid. This makes us wonder where she was busy all this while when she never visited us and said she was busy at work. He said he would be sending the divorce papers soon at our place. Mom told him Karen wasn't here, so there was no point sending it to us. He said he didn't know her whereabouts, so he had to send the papers to her parents' house. Not sure about the law in this sort of case where the wife has fled, but that's what he said. Mom told him about all the fuss she had created over Dad's will. Her husband wasn't aware that Karen got $100,000 in the will. He said Karen had told him that Dad gave everything to me and insisted he'd lend money so that she could sue us for forgery. But her husband didn't give the money. He said that maybe Karen had incurred considerable debts in the gambling and would have used that $100,000 to pay it off. Isn't it so disgusting that she used Dad's hard-earned savings to save her ass from the gambling loss? Karen didn't visit us after that. Mom tried calling her, but her number was either switched off or out of network. But a few days ago, she called Mom asking for money for some emergency reason. Mom asked her the reason, and she said her daughter met with an accident, and her husband was out of town and she needed urgent cash. It was all a lie. Mom told her that we know all the truth and that her husband has sent a legal notice that she had run away with his money and assets. She hung up the call and never called back. I think she has understood that now her malicious actions have been exposed, and she can no longer put a proud face in front of us. Amidst all these, my ex-husband, who left me for his colleague, has been making advances. We used to sometimes talk about the matter concerning our son, and now I see he indulges in comfortable talks with me. Makes me wonder money can bring a lot more than you think. Anyways, I might cover this dynamics in a different thread. But thanks for all the love and support I got from this community. You guys are the best. Now on to the next story. Story 7. Discovered that my wife cheated on with a dog breeder, so I took my revenge. I 32 male and my wife 32 female were huge animal lovers, and in our 8 years of being together, I thought it would keep our bond strong. In fact, this is what brought us together in the first place. I remember putting in my dating profile many moons ago about wanting to go on a date with someone who was at the park with my dog. She messaged me back and said that she wanted to do the same. Now, our relationship seemed so perfect from the start. We both got along super well in our love for animals. Especially my dog brought us closer. She didn't have a dog herself, but instead, a cat. The cat and my dog grew to love each other when she moved in with me. I thought that she was the one and the most perfect person I could think of. I mean, come on, animal lover and didn't want me to toss away my dog, my best friend. Seems so right. Naturally, I popped the question quickly. I imagined we could all have the animal house we wanted where we got along swimmingly. While hiking, I asked her at the top of the mountain one day. She said yes, and I was over the moon. We planned the wedding quickly and had a small ceremony where we and a few family members got together. My dog was the ring bearer because he mattered so much, and neither of us knew anyone with sons to take this responsibility. From the moment I said, I do, I knew this life would be perfect, which is why I still don't understand why my biggest love is what caused my relationship's downfall. So here we were, happily married and with our animals. 3 years into our relationship, her cat, Spartacus, got along super well with Boney, my dog. Naturally, I figured that our family of 4 would be the ideal, until she asked a question. This was about 5 years into our relationship. She said that we might get him a companion because Boney was getting older. I told her nope, he doesn't need it. Boney never seemed to care about other animals. He just liked his treats and pets. For me, I took him out every day to get exercise, and while Boney was still spry and happy, I could tell he was getting old. The vet warned me that his joints were beginning to wear down, and he might not be the energetic dog I've had for over 10 years. She started to ask again. I kept telling her no, that this is a huge responsibility. She worked as a graphic designer, sometimes working long hours, and she didn't have the time for a dog. We had many arguments about it until one day and she showed me a freaking PowerPoint on why she should get a dog. I finally gave in. However, when we went to the shelter, none of the dogs seemed to fit. They were friendly, sure, but she didn't see one that fit her. She told me that she wanted a golden doodle. Naturally, these dogs are laid back, and their temperaments are great. It's perfect for old Boney because he's not as active as he used to be. And if the dog wanted to wrestle in Rough House, Spartacus still acted like a kitten, despite being 8. She told me that there were reputable golden doodle breeders. I gave in, told her sure, and she did her research. She brought up this breeder which was really close to our place, so I agreed, why not? We could get the dog and then head back by the end of the day. At least she wasn't trekking me halfway across the country for a dog. We drove over there and then we met the breeder. His name was Alex. Now, my wife is a bit flirty, but suddenly, she started moving closer to him, engaged in conversation. This was just the initial introduction stage. It bothered me, but I figured maybe I was overreacting. We agreed to return in about a month once the puppies were weaned from their mother. In that month, I saw a change in my wife. She grew distant, and when Boney and I went out to the park, she would stay behind. She told me it was work, but I have seen no major financial changes since then. Something wasn't right, and I couldn't put my finger on it. Naturally, I didn't want to cause trouble, so I kept mum. A month passed, and we went over there again. Now, these two were incredibly friendly towards each other, to the point where I was being pushed out. This started to get me angry. I asked her if something was going on between Alex and her. They were close enough to each other, so naturally it could be possible, but nope, nothing. She told me he was just a nice guy helping her get her dog ready. We argued about it, and she told me I was being paranoid. I told her I didn't appreciate being left out of the decisions. We both needed space. Then it came time to adopt the little golden doodle. We paid the breeder fee, which is insane. I don't know why I thought spending over $1,000 on a dog was a good idea, and we took our tiny boy, Moose, home. Moose and Boney did well together, but I noticed she was not spending much time with the dog. I told her he needed some attention, and she brushed me off. Sometimes we got into fights over this. She would say to me she was going somewhere and leave me with the dogs. This was her responsibility, so naturally, I'm getting a little bit pissed at this point. One day after she left, I realized she didn't take her phone. Curiosity got the better of me, and like a bloodhound, I looked through it. There were texts between her and Alex. Some of them flirty. He had a different name on her phone, and the spicy messages were hidden. The longer I read them, the angrier I got, so naturally, I had to do something about this. I wasn't gonna let this who conned me into buying a dog that was over $1,000 get away with this. She told Alex she wanted me to get the dog to help him so they could love together. I got in the car and I had Boney with me. We drove over to the ranch house where Alex was. The gate was open and I saw a light on. I went through the back and that's when I got an idea. I let Boney in first. They had the door open to the bedroom. There weren't any animals inside, so they didn't have to worry. Boney jumped on the bed and licked her face. I stepped inside, catching them in the act. My wife pulled away, and she accused me of being the bad guy, stalking and spying. I confronted her about the cheating. The tears fell, crocodile tears in my opinion. She asked if she could forgive me. She said that Alex and she hit it off well, and she didn't mean to hurt me, but of course the damage was done. I told her not to come home. I changed the locks and called my lawyer shortly after that for the divorce proceedings. I told her that if she loved Alex so much, she should live with him. The proceedings went through quickly, and I got the house, the cars, and the golden doodle. While he was a handful, he became Boney's companion. It's a blessing in this otherwise messed up story. I blasted Alex's breeder business all over social media, posting that he's a cheater, a liar, and will steal wives. Naturally, the public stopped going to his place, and from what I saw, it closed. Good riddance. The dogs, Spartacus and I, are still in that house. She hasn't tried to contact me, and I think she either ran off with Alex or is alone. Neither of them is in my life anymore, and I do not want to find out. Now on to the next story. Story 8. I cheated on my wife and found out the unthinkable. I'll try to keep this as brief and to the point as possible. I'll preface all of this by saying I am a reformed cheating addict. I know that I effed up. Let's start with the backstory. I met my wife in HS. We dated for 3 years but broke it off in the middle of senior year. We stayed broken up for a little over a year. During that year I dated a little, fooled around a little, hooked up with a couple girls but mostly hung out with friends. Nothing serious. We got back together and everything was great. At 21 we had our first child and got married. My daughter changed my life. I went from nerdy video game slacker to a highly ambitious IT professional overnight. I found a great job, got promoted quickly, and started to travel for work. At 24 we had our second child. Prior to kids our sex life was pretty great, anywhere from 2 to 5 times a week, but after the second one it was maybe once every other month, usually less. I met someone that worked at one of the locations I traveled to. A similar situation, young, married with kids, no sex. It started innocent as it always does, but eventually we decided we loved our spouses but still needed sex, and rather than run the risk of getting emotionally involved, we would just have sex when I was in town. When I wasn't in town, we talk like friends/coworkers and flirt lightly, but that's it. But a relationship like this allowed us both to open up to some sexual kinks we'd never shared with our spouses, and the kind of stuff I didn't get to do when I was single for a year. We did this for about 1.5 years, which ended up being about 6 visits. We both decided that while it was nice to have kinky no-string sex, we should really refocus our energy on trying to fix our sexless marriages. And I did. I completely put all my energy into rekindling the fire of passion in my marriage. It didn't really work, but everything outside of the bedroom is perfect, so I decided that I was okay with very little sex because she is an amazing woman and I don't want to break up a great family just because I'm not getting sex. I also made a vow to stay faithful, which I did. Then about 2 years ago my wife found a video on the laptop of me and my secret sex buddy. I came clean about everything, admitted I was wrong, and vowed to prove that I'm worth trusting. She had some requirements that I accepted without question. I stopped hanging out with friends, stopped playing any and all video games, no longer chatted on MSN with friends, very limited time on the internet, switched jobs, helped out more around the house, let her have full access to my email, etc. Basically, I decided that I would cut out everything that could be a distraction from rebuilding trust. It's 2 years later and I'm confused. I've been faithful for more than 3 years now and done everything asked of me and more. I've made such major changes in my life and who I am to prove that I can be trusted, but it's made very little difference. Still almost no sex and she is very, very mistrusting still. She can have a Facebook, but I can't. She can go out with friends occasionally, but I can't. I can play a video game, but only if it has no online/chat component. We did counseling for about 6 months and the therapist did say she saw improvements and that I was making a serious effort to prove my trustworthiness and unlikely to cheat again. My wife didn't like sharing details of our life and felt it wasn't helping. Recently, a girl I knew in HS contacted me and made it very clear she'd be interested in a sex-on relationship. I told her no, but it made me start to wonder how much punishment should I endure? I feel that I've tried as hard as I can and I want it to get better, but I refuse to spend the next 70 years apologizing and walking around with my tail between my legs. But I also don't want to be a weekend-only dad. That would kill me and I still very, very much love my wife. I just don't know what to do. Edit. Thanks to everyone commenting. I really do appreciate it and I'm reading all of them. I also updated this a bit to mention we did try counseling. Update 1. First, let me say thank you to everyone who commented. I read all of them and they helped me more than I can ever say. Thank you, Reddit. What a difference a week makes. I came to Reddit Air 5 days ago and the life I had last week is nearly unrecognizable from the one I have today. Wall of text ahead. After reading all the comments last week, I decided I'm not a prisoner and things had to change. I made plans to go out with friends I hadn't seen in over a year on Friday night. On Thursday night, I sat down with my wife to try to reopen communication, let her know that I have needs and wants that aren't being met and that if we are going to make this work, then some changes have to happen. She is my partner, not my warden. She took it pretty well and seemed to understand where I was coming from and recognized the huge amount of work I've put into myself in this relationship. Felt like a fairly major breakthrough. We even discussed picking a new therapist and giving that another try. But there was something nagging me the whole time. A Redditor said to me that he went through something similar but eventually found out his wife was also cheating, which explained the Alcatraz-style lockdown on his life. I don't know why, but I couldn't shake this thought. I know my wife wouldn't cheat, but she's also a reasonable person, so why the hell have I been on house arrest for 2 years? After a couple days, the thought got the better of me and I put a keylogger on our laptop. I did this Thursday afternoon. Friday comes and I am excited to see my buddies. We talked a little before I left. She was apprehensive but understood this is necessary to rebuild lasting trust in our relationship, and like Reddit suggested, I hardly had anything to drink, answered texts and phone calls in a timely fashion, and got home 20 minutes before I said I would as a show of good faith. My wife is in bed already but sleepily asks how the night went, and I said it was great. Saturday morning we discuss it at length. She seems genuinely happy in understanding and I am beaming ear to ear. Not only did I get to see the buddies, but it appears that I'm making headway in my relationship. Win-win. And while I'm on this euphoric high, I decide that trust is not made with a keylogger. It was dumb to install it and will only create paranoia in me. I should also mention that while she has full access to my email, I have the same access to her email and Facebook, so really it seemed that a keylogger was overkill. I go to uninstall, of course curiosity gets the best of me, and I check the very limited 2.5 days worth of logs. Nothing jumps out at me. Amazon, Facebook, YouTube, Gmail, etc. I get to the end of the log and it's looking good until I see another trip to Gmail. This time for an account I have never seen before. I remain calm. I keep an old Hotmail account for spam sign-up crap. I've advised her to do the same and only let friends know her real email. Either way, I log into the new account. No spam, no nothing. It's empty, just a bunch of empty folders until I hit the tax information folder. Now this folder is full. Full is in hundreds of emails. However, none of it is tax-related. All of it is to or from Steve. I have a 65-year step-uncle named Steve, but this is not him. I don't know who this Steve is. These emails are graphic. Lots of what he likes to do to her and what she once likes to do to him. Lots of "last weekend was amazing" type stuff. So after reading maybe 30 of these, I decide I need to stop reading them. I made a new Gmail account and forwarded all of them to this account. Then I went back and deleted my tracks. I'm somewhat calm during all this. It sucks, but I cheated, so I am now experiencing what she did when she found out about me. While forwarding them, I pay closer attention to the dates. This affair has been going on for a very long time. All the way back to roughly a year before my son was born, or 5 years before I cheated. That hits me like a ton of bricks. What if my son isn't mine? What if my 1-year-old baby girl isn't mine? I lost it. I verify my tracks are covered and bolt out of the house saying I'm going to the gym. I sit in my car for 2 hours crying at the thought they might not be mine, and how do I ever move forward? I have no idea how to confront her. I head home and find her best friend is there. They have decided they want to go a movie. I'm still in shock, so I just nod. I need time to process anyways. So I put the kids to bed and try to figure out how I'm going to talk to her about this. I decide to check her secret Gmail again. She emailed him 4 hours earlier. She told him she'd have an hour after the movie to meet up. Check the time, the movie is done or close to it. I start calling her cell repeatedly. No answer. I call about 10 times. No answer. It's 1 a.m. and I'm sitting on the couch and she walks in surprise to see me up. Asks if I'm feeling okay. Huh? I stood up right in front of her and said I'm fine and asked her, "Why didn't you pick up the phone?" She says it was a movie. Can't talk in a movie, and then she forgot to check it when she headed to the bar for one drink. She makes her way to the stairs and I say, "How is Steve doing?" Her face goes white. Your Uncle Steve," she says. "No, the Steve you just got done effing 20 minutes ago." "How is he?" I say. She says nothing. I tell her I found the Gmail account. I saw her email planning to meet him after the movie tonight. With what little composure I had left, I asked, "Why didn't you come clean when you found about me cheating? We could have fixed this together." She starts bawling and runs upstairs. I follow. What ensues is the worst 4 hours of my life. She comes clean that she met him back when she was working. He was a temp. I again asked, why not come clean 2 years ago so we could both work on this? She says she was too hurt by what I did and too ashamed to come clean. She said she told Steve she needed it to end and wanted to work on our marriage, and she says she did, but about 8 months later ended up hooking up again and it started all over. I asked why the prison rules. She says it's because she loves me and didn't want me to leave. I explained that while not right, I cheated because we didn't have sex, but obviously she was having sex elsewhere, so she didn't need it at home. So I asked why she cheated, because I know prior to Steve we had sex 2 to 3 times a week and she came 1 to 2 times each time. She says he was relentless in pursuing her, which made her feel sexy, and that the relationship was taboo, which added a thrill. "Do you love him?" To which she says no, but like the thrill and the taboo. I could go on and on. I asked a million questions. Eventually I asked the big question, are the 2 youngest kids mine? She assures me they are. I ask how can she be so sure? To which her response is, she just knows. Despite what she says, she has no way without a blood test to assure me they are mine. I am crushed on so many levels. I stand up and head for the door. She stops me and begs me to forgive her and that we will work this out. I can impose harsh rules if I want and watch her every move, and she will do anything to fix this. I calmly tell her I have no interest in being a warden and that I need to go for a walk. I walk for an hour and come home and crash on the couch. Sunday was beyond a ward. I said very little to her. I studied my 2 youngest, trying to find my traits in them. Every time I think I'd see something, it'd be struck by the fact that I don't know what Steve looks like. Perhaps he has big ears too, and that's where my son gets them. We talked briefly Sunday night. Despite wanting to ask more and understand more, my soul just wasn't in it. So we went to bed separately and I laid awake to the sound of her crying upstairs. Felt good to get that out. Am not sure what to do from here. Part of me thinks that neither of us will likely ever trust the other, but the other part thinks that she could have left 2 years ago to either be alone or be with Steve. She gave me another chance and am a better person for having that chance. Wouldn't it be hypocritical of me to end this because of infidelity? Doesn't she deserve a chance to prove herself and improve herself like I have? Update 2. I got home from work and she had the kids at her parents' for a sleepover. She kept trying to get me to say what I thought or felt, and I kept pretty quiet. I told her I didn't know what I thought or felt yet. I know I need to talk to her, but all I feel like doing is laying on the couch with some beer and watching Futurama till I pass out. She did eventually get me to talk. I basically said that I don't know what to do, but I think at the very least we need some separation and therapy if we are going to attempt to fix this. She was unhappy about the separation part, but I put my foot down. I've lived trapped in my house for 2 years. Perhaps I'm not the person she loves, but instead loves the idea of us. She saw my point and said she did love me but understood that some time apart might help. Update 3. Hello. It's been a few months. I'd just like to say right away that you all help so much. Wall of text as always. Well, it's 6 months after I found out my wife had been cheating and a lot has changed. After finding out, the first thing I did was get the kids' DNA tested. Then I spent the next 2 weeks sleeping on the couch and having endless conversations with my wife. The more we talked, the more I felt like the world's biggest chump. I had poured my soul into fixing the relationship and was racked with guilt while she was out having sex with some guy, but I also couldn't see myself just walking away. She'd been in my life since we were 15, we are 29, so I agreed to start therapy immediately and see how I felt after talking to someone else. To say the therapist was a bit shocked by our story is a bit of an understatement. This lady was pretty blunt in saying that nearly all of our problems stem from my wife's actions and she needed counseling just for her in addition to the couples session. While we were in therapy, I moved out and crashed with my best friend but demanded the house on the weekend so I could be with the kids. My other conditions were that she cut off all contact with Steve and that we talk openly about everything. Any lies, even white lies, and I would be done. I also wanted full control of the bill/budget. She complied. I never divulged that it was a key logger that helped me find out what was going on. She just assumed that she had stayed logged into her secret Gmail account and I didn't correct her. Bad move, but I figured that since I've been lied to for 3+ years, I had the right to do a bit of spying. This puts us at roughly 4 weeks after I found out, and finally the results from the kids' DNA tests come back. All mine. That was such a relief that I can't even describe it. It almost felt like I didn't care what happened with my wife anymore because I knew my kids were mine and I'd always have them, and one thought stuck in my mind the whole time was I can accept that people make mistakes, but if she loved me she had the chance to come clean about her mistake when she caught me. Instead she put me on lockdown for years. Who does that to someone they love? I just could stop thinking about that. Therapy was going well, but I was becoming jealous and angry. Always upset. I was away from home all week, and then on the weekend I'd tear apart the laptop trying to find out what she'd been doing in my absence. She was checking her secret email, and Steve was continuing to email her, but she never responded. That was the breaking point. She hadn't shut down the email like I had asked, and while she wasn't responding, she was checking the emails, almost like she was keeping her safety net around so she could go back if things didn't work out, or maybe not. I don't know. But I didn't want to be an angry and jealous all the time. I didn't want to be a warden. The next day I confronted her and told her I couldn't forgive what she had done. I told her I could probably move past the cheating, but the way I was treated was terrible. I explained how I had pushed friends out of my life and shut myself off from the world to work on us, only to find out I was being kept prisoner so she could keep effing her boy toy. She broke down crying, saying she'd do anything to salvage the relationship, but it fell on deaf ears. That Monday I contacted an attorney. Fast forward 4.5 months and I have my own place. Divorce is nearly final and I'm finally starting to feel like me again. We are going for 50-50 custody. I've been reconnecting with friends and trying to find new hobbies for when I don't have the kids. I've been on 2 dates because a couple friends wanted to double date, thinking it would help me. It was nice to meet new girls, but I'm just nowhere near ready to trust anyone. Part of me thinks I'll just put off dating until the kids are out of HS. The kids are sad that we aren't together, but we keep all of this away from them. No arguing in front of them and no bashing the other when they aren't around. But either way, I think I'm on the road to recovery, and feel free to ask anything because you guys helped more than I could ever say. Now on to the next story. Story 9. I don't want to take in my troubled teenage nephew after my brother and sister-in-law passed away. I, 38M, had an older brother, Jim, 42M, who passed away unexpectedly in a car accident 3 months ago along with his wife, and 40F. They have left behind their only son, Matt, 17M, who is now orphaned. Matt has always been a troubled kid. He got into drugs and alcohol at a young age and has been in and out of rehab programs since he was 15. My brother and his wife tried their best to help Matt, but he always relapsed. He got kicked out of multiple schools for behavioral issues and was even arrested a few times for possession of drugs and driving under the influence. Since my brother and Anne's passing, Matt has been staying with Anne's parents, as they were named his legal guardians in their will. However, Anne's parents are in their late 60s, in poor health, and struggling to handle a rebellious teenager. They reached out, saying they cannot care for Matt any longer and he needs a new home. As Matt's closest living relative, I am the next of kin to take him in, but honestly, I really don't want custody of my nephew. My wife, Sarah, 36F, and I have 3 kids of our own, 9F, 7M, 5F, and live a comfortable, drama-free life. We don't want to invite a troubled teenager into our home and risk him being a bad influence on our kids. I proposed Matt go live with Jim's best friend, Nick, 40M, who was like an uncle to Matt growing up, but Nick said his wife isn't comfortable taking Matt, given his issues. Other than Nick, my brother has no close friends who could take Matt. I feel guilty even suggesting this, but I told Anne's parents that Matt could go into the foster system until he turns 18 and becomes a legal adult. But they were adamant that Jim and Anne would have wanted Matt to stay in the family. Anne's parents have made it clear that if I don't take Matt in, they will pursue legal action to force me to become his guardian. I understand that Matt is going through a difficult time losing both parents and needs family, but I can't sacrifice my own kid's well-being and security to take him in, especially given his troubled history. My wife supports my decision, but the rest of my extended family is pressuring me to take Matt in, saying he is just a kid who experienced a tragedy and needs his family now more than ever. They are accusing me of abandoning my orphan nephew. I want to do right by my brother's wishes, but I don't think he would want me to put my own kids at risk. Taking Matt in could jeopardize everything stable in my life, but refusing to raise my orphan nephew also feels incredibly harsh. So, AITA? Should I take in my troubled teenage nephew against my better judgment just because he has no other family options? Update 1. It has been 2 weeks since my original post asking if I am the A for not wanting to take in my troubled teenage nephew, Matt, after my brother, Jim, and his wife, Anne, passed away. I received a lot of thoughtful feedback and have been doing some soul-searching to figure out the right path forward. Here is an update on what has happened since. After posting on AITA, I sat down with my wife, Sarah, for many long discussions about the possibility of taking Matt in. We talked through all our concerns, the influence Matt could have on our kids, the risks to our comfortable family dynamic, and whether we would have the time and energy to provide Matt the structure and support he needs. But we also talked about how Matt has suffered so much loss already and how taking him in could give him his best and only chance to get back on the right track. Though it wouldn't be easy, we started opening up to the idea that as the only relatives Matt has left, maybe we have an obligation to try and help him despite his past issues. I met up with Jim's best friend, Nick, who again expressed remorse that he and his wife felt they couldn't take Matt in. Nick stressed that Matt is a good kid deep down who has been through unspeakable tragedy for someone so young. He said if anyone could help Matt find his way, it was Sarah and I. I also sat down with my parents, who said they would provide extra support if we took Matt in, offering to have him over for dinner often so he gets out of our house and helping cover the cost of his basic necessities, like clothes and food. Their willingness to pitch in made this feel slightly less daunting. The more Sarah and I reflected, the more we warmed up to the idea of becoming Matt's legal guardians. We decided we had to at least try to keep Jim's son in the family, though we would need to have precautions and house rules in place. I reached out to Anne's parents to say Sarah and I were open to taking Matt in but needed to have some difficult conversations first. The grandpa warned me that Matt has been in a dark place since Jim and Anne passed, often refusing to speak for days, but they were overjoyed we were considering it. I then went with Anne's dad to pick Matt up from their house. When Matt came outside, I was shocked by his appearance. He had lost weight, had dark circles under his eyes, and just looked utterly drained of life. The drive back was completely silent no matter how much I tried chatting with him. At my home, I sat Matt down along with Sarah and our kids to explain that we wanted him to join our family, but I was very upfront about the house rules. Mandatory counseling twice a week, curfew by 11 p.m., required check-ins throughout the day, no drug or alcohol use whatsoever, and if he broke any rules, he would be sent to foster care. I tried to get a sense of Matt's thoughts on this plan, but like the car ride, he just sat expressionless, looking down at the floor, and saying nothing no matter how I poked. I know he is grieving and depressed, but his total lack of engagement started to make me feel like I was throwing a lifeline to someone who had already sunk. After 30 minutes of awkward, one-sided conversation, I became so frustrated I admitted I didn't know if this would work, and maybe he just wasn't ready to accept our help. At that, Matt suddenly sprang up and cursed me out before storming upstairs to one of the guest rooms, slamming the door shut behind him. Sarah quickly ushered our confused kids outside while I tried going upstairs to speak with Matt again, but I could hear music blasting from his room as he essentially barricaded himself in. After that disastrous first meeting, Sarah and I began having doubts this could succeed if Matt refused to even acknowledge our existence, let alone follow house rules. Over the next few days, Matt barely came out of the guest room. He leaves only to go to the bathroom or occasionally grab food from the kitchen when we aren't around. Sarah has left sandwiches and snacks by his door trying to get some nutrition into him, but he won't say a word to any of us or make eye contact. I plan to give it another week or so to see if Matt starts engaging more once he adjusts to our home, but if this complete shutdown continues, as much as it pains me, I don't think we can do much good for him until he is ready to meet us halfway. I feel like I am at least obligated to try this, given that I am his last living relative, but I won't put my own kids' well-being at risk for someone who seemingly doesn't want help getting their life on track. I wish I could get through to him, but only Matt can decide when he is prepared to move forward. I am going to suggest family counseling for all of us, including Matt, but if he refuses or lashes out violently again, I just don't know how we can build a constructive environment for him. We'll give it my best shot and hope he comes around soon, but I am losing optimism about this working out. Update 2. It has now been 2 weeks since Matt came to live with us. Unfortunately, there has been very little progress. He is still largely shutting himself in his room all day, coming out only occasionally for food. He isn't engaging with me, Sarah, or the kids at all. I decided it was time for some tough love. I gave Matt an ultimatum. Either he starts coming to family dinners and counseling sessions and adheres to the house rules we outlined, or we can't let him stay here anymore. The night I gave him this ultimatum, I heard Matt's door quietly open around 3 a.m. I woke up and listened closely from my bedroom. I then heard the front door open and close. I immediately got up to check. Matt's room was empty, and it was clear he had snuck out of the house. I was furious. After we had generously opened our home to him, Matt was already violating our trust by sneaking off in the middle of the night to who knows where. I paced around anxiously waiting for him to return. Around 5 a.m., I heard the front door again and looked out the window to see Matt walking up to the house. I opened the door and confronted him. "Where the hell were you? You know the rules." Matt just ignored me and walked silently back to his room. This blatant disregard for our rules and disrespect towards me was unacceptable. As soon as Matt woke up that morning, I told him he had to leave our home if he refused to follow our guidelines. To my surprise, Matt broke down crying. Between sobs, he apologized and pleaded for another chance. He said he had been going through the worst time of his life, struggling with grief and depression. The nighttime escapes were his unhealthy way of coping when his feelings became too overwhelming. Seeing Matt finally express raw emotion made me realize how hard he was trying to bottle everything up. As angry as I was at his behavior, my heart broke realizing just how deeply distraught he was. Sarah and I decided to give him one more chance, but we said from now on, the guest room door stays open 24/7, and we are installing a security system on all outside doors that will alert us if he leaves again. We also said he has to start seeing a grief counselor 3 times a week, no excuses. Matt agreed to our terms. He apologized to our kids for ignoring them and started making some effort to have small talk at family meals instead of just retreating to his room. It wasn't much progress, but it was a start, baby steps. The next few nights, Matt abided by the rules, even though I know the open door policy embarrassed him. But 2 weeks into this new arrangement, I woke up again at 3 a.m. to the sound of the front door alarm going off. Matt had left again. I immediately jumped in my car and drove around looking for him. I eventually found him staggering around a nearby park, clearly drunk or high. I dragged him back to the car over his slurred protests. When we got home, I again told him this wasn't working and we couldn't help him if he kept going behind our backs like this. The rest of that morning, he begged and cried again, swearing it was a moment of weakness and he would get better. But this time I was unmoved. He had his chance. I told him I would drive him to a fostering agency after breakfast. When I came downstairs again, ready to take Matt to the agency, he and all his belongings were gone. There was a note on the counter apologizing and thanking us for trying but saying he just isn't ready to give up his vices yet, especially with the grief making him feel so hopeless. I tried to stop him or call him back, but his phone went straight to voicemail. Sarah and I were worried sick about where he ended up. The next morning, we got a call from the police. Matt had broken into an acquaintance's vacant house to squat there, but the neighbors saw and reported it. We came and picked Matt up from the police station. It was clear whatever positive progress we had made was gone. He was back to giving us the cold shoulder and stare of contempt. The police said if Matt wasn't a minor, they would have arrested him, but since he was still 17, they released him back to us with a warning. This time, we told Matt he could not stay with us any longer. We dropped him off at the foster agency ourselves. They found a temporary home for him until he turns 18 and 6 months. Part of me wonders if I gave up on him too soon, if I should have been more patient and forgiving, but I can't expose my own kids to his behavior, and he repeatedly proved he did not want to change. His self-destruction and anger run too deep for me to save him from himself. Maybe once Matt has truly hit rock bottom alone, he will realize he needs to make a choice to either turn his life around or continue down this dark path. I hope he chooses right eventually, but it is out of my hands now. I just pray my brother and his wife can rest knowing I tried my best by their son. That is all I can do for now. Update 3. It has now been 3 months since I last saw Matt. His 18th birthday is in just a few weeks. Last night, I received a devastating call from Matt's foster mom, Jenny. She was in tears, saying Matt had climbed out his bedroom window 4 nights ago and never came back. She filed a police report, but there were no leads on his whereabouts. Jenny said she had a bad feeling Matt was in serious danger, likely back on the streets and using with the wrong crowds again. She begged me to drive around the areas he used to frequent and search for him. My wife, Sarah, and I were extremely worried. We left the kids with my parents and spent all night driving anywhere we thought Matt could be. We checked parks, abandoned buildings, diners, everywhere. As daylight broke and there was still no sign of Matt, our worst fears intensified. I couldn't bear the thought of him lying in a ditch somewhere hurt or worse. Exhausted and despairing, Sarah and I stopped in a parking lot to gather our emotions. Just then, my phone rang again. It was Jenny. Police found Matt unconscious in a local park. They were taking him to Mercy Hospital now. Sarah and I rushed to the hospital. Doctors said Matt had suffered a heroin overdose, but they managed to revive him, though he was still unresponsive. They warned us that even if he pulled through, there could be brain damage. A detective spoke to us and said witnesses reported Matt was at a known drug den party last night. He likely took a bad batch of heroin laced with fentanyl. The detective sadly remarked how too often good kids fall prey to the opioid crisis. Sarah and I stood vigil by Matt's hospital bed, praying he would recover. He looked so small and helpless lying there, tubes covering his face. All our petty grievances with him melted away. I just desperately wanted my nephew to live. The doctors did brain scans and found significant injury. When Matt finally regained consciousness the next day, it was clear from his slurred speech and confusion that his overdose left permanent damage. Over the next few weeks in the hospital, Matt remained in a partly unresponsive haze. He could communicate mostly through mumbles and gestures, but his speech and cognition were clearly impaired. Once he was medically stable, the doctors recommended Matt move into a full-time care facility, as he could no longer live independently given his disabilities. We looked at options nearby, but none were covered by his Medicaid plan. Sarah and I made the difficult decision to take Matt back into our home permanently. He requires round-the-clock care now. Between his physical and mental limitations, we converted our guest room to be handicap accessible and found nurses to look after him while we're working. Having Matt moved back in has meant major changes to our family's routine. Our kids were initially scared seeing their once rebellious cousin now docile and dependent, but they have since warmed up to helping care for him. As heartbreaking as seeing Matt like this is, in an odd way, I now have hope for the first time in years that he can get back on a positive path. Once this all sinks in, he is finally free from the demons that controlled him. Matt has a long road of recovery ahead, but Sarah and I are committed to providing him the safe, stable home he always deserved. I wish desperately I could go back in time and make different choices, but all I can do now is look ahead. What matters now is being there for Matt so he can still have a worthwhile future. Now on to the next story. Story 10. My 42M son, Roger, 16M, has started wearing face paint anytime he goes out and has started hanging out with a girl that is a bad influence. Editor's note: ICP means Insane Clown Posse. Juggalos are what their fan base call themselves. A few months ago, my son started failing classes. Since school just got over, he failed 2 classes. This kid has gotten A's and B's up until a few months ago. Around this same time, he started hanging out with some girl from school. I don't know what kids call it these days, but she wears a lot of baggy clothing, pale makeup, and wears ICP shirts every time I've seen her. I think my son is in love with her because he now always paints his face before he goes out, with the exception of when he was going to school. He had about $500 saved up, and I guess he went out and bought all these ICP shirts and hats. At first, I didn't know what ICP was, so I Googled it. I found that there is a culture around this band and they call themselves Juggalos. I found a lot of negative stuff about Juggalos, so naturally I was concerned. Some even consider it a gang. I brought this up with my son and asked him if he was on drugs. This was about 2 weeks after he started dressing this way. He told me to mind my own business and slammed his bedroom door in my face. If I ever talked to my dad that way, I got smacked upside the head. But these days it's considered child abuse, so I didn't do much. At this point, I waited a few days and tried to talk to him about it again. This time he told me that I was being dumb and that he wasn't doing drugs. I asked him why he was wearing face paint. He told me that it was no different than me wearing Kiss makeup when I went to one of their concerts years ago. I told him I was going to a concert, not going to the grocery store to buy a gallon of milk. The argument really didn't get anywhere and I decided to let it go. This was until we went out for our yearly Mother's Day dinner. We usually go to a decent restaurant, and this year we decided to go to Macaroni Grill. Well, my son decided he was going to wear his face paint and ICP clothes to this dinner. I was pissed off and told him to go change. I told him that this wasn't a circus and we were celebrating his mother. He got very upset and yelled some profanity at me about how I am a horrible father. I don't know if I was in the wrong here, so let me know what you guys think. Because of this argument, we didn't go to dinner. I feel horrible about it for my wife's sake, and I did make it up to her the next day. But that isn't relevant to the issue at hand. So up until last week, my son and I had little contact, and when I would try to talk to him, he gave me the silent treatment. This last weekend, I found something no father wishes they would ever find. Call me a bad father for snooping, but I did. He was out doing his thing with this girl, and I wanted to see if he had any drugs in his room. I thought maybe I would find some pot. If I did, I would confiscate it and ground him for a few weeks. But what I found was a white powdery substance in a small Ziploc bag. I knew exactly what this was. I had a cocaine problem before I met my wife, so I knew what it looked like. To make sure I was headed in the right direction, I smelled the bag. It was definitely cocaine. Obviously, being a former addict, I didn't want to taste it to be 100% sure. I went and talked with my wife about it, and she was shocked. We didn't know what to do. Hours later, my son showed up with this girl. I called him out about what I found, and he completely lost it and told me I had no right to go through his things. I realized I might be a horrible father for this, but I would be even more horrible if he had died from an overdose. He didn't even deny it. After his yelling was finished, I asked the girl to leave and that this was a family matter. My son told me to F off and took her to his room. My wife was crying, and I was fuming. Took a lot not to slap him across the head, but I maintained myself and didn't resort to that. What I did next is what I feel was the best thing I could do. I called the police on them. My wife is still very upset with me for this, but I didn't see another way to help him out short of physically forcing his girlfriend out and him to stay. The cops came, found that he had some pot, the girl was asked to leave, and my son was told if he tried to leave, the cops would take him to a youth detention center for a few days. Well, since all of this, My son has been grounded and is not allowed to see this girl. It's easy for me to blame it all on the girl, but I am sure I failed somewhere for my son to act this way. Apparently, he is talking to my wife and asked her about going to some field juggalos and ICP has. I looked it up, and it sounds like bad news. My wife said he could go without talking to me. I am at a loss at this point. While I want my son to experience life, he seems to be headed down a dangerous road, and my wife is enabling it. I did talk to my wife about it, and all she can say is that this is our way of making up for calling the cops on him. Can someone who has had troubles in youth give me some pointers here? If I'm going about it the wrong way, I would appreciate your input. What would you guys do? Update. First off, I got a lot of different advice and some personal messages from a number of people. Some of the advice has been helpful, some of it not so much. There was a particular user that said I was a piece of shit and didn't deserve children. I don't believe anything I said warranted such an accusation. Either way, thanks to everyone for the advice. Anyway, now for an update. So I showed my wife some of the responses on this thread. She was annoyed at first that I let strangers in on our problem, but seemed okay with it once she was done going through your responses. She was very shocked about what goes on at the festival. She had agreed to let my son go too. We were watching a couple of the videos posted, and she was horrified by Drug Bridge the most. We agreed that my son would not be able to go without adult supervision. As for my wife and I not being on the same page, she agrees with myself and some of you that we need coupled therapy to see if we can figure out a better resolution to disagreements about our children. I made the appointment this morning as I didn't want to wait until we just decided we didn't need it. Some of you probably know how that goes. One user sent me a personal message who had actually gone on tour as a supporting band, I believe at some point with ICP, and had some interesting and good insight on them. I won't go into who it was, but he was a pretty decent sounding guy, and I realized that the problem here has little to do with the music my son is listening to. It is more about something he is going through, and we need to figure it out along with him and help him. Now for our son. After my wife and I talked about the situation, we decided it would be best if we had a friendly conversation with our son, one that would not include yelling for my wife or myself. Even if our son raised his voice, we were going to tell him our decision on the concert and see if we could find common ground on a few of the other issues. So last night we sat him down when he had gotten back from hanging with his female friend. She came with him, as she needed to grab something that was in his room. She had a DVD case in her hand when she left, so I'm assuming that is all it was. Before she left, I did apologize to her about yelling at her the other day. I didn't apologize about calling the cops. I know there are mixed feelings on this. To be clear, I flushed the cocaine before the police arrived and had no idea that my son had pot on him. I initially called the cops because his friend refused to leave. I had no intention on having anyone arrested. I just wanted someone who I asked, well, yelled at, to leave. It is possible if I spoke calmly when I asked her, it would have worked out better for all of us. Anyway, back to the point. So she seemed a bit surprised, as did our son. She left shortly after, and that is when we asked our son if we could have a chat. He resisted at first and tried to walk away, but I said, please, son, I just want to talk. I'm not going to yell. I just want to know what I can do to be a better father. It worked, even if he looked annoyed. Before I got into the drug use or ICP and face paint stuff, I asked him if he was all right. I asked him if he needed to talk to someone, a therapist, me, his mother. He kind of just sat there. My wife asked him the same thing with different phrasing to see if she could get him to open up. At this point, he started to tear up, and I could tell he wanted to say something. I shut my mouth, though, and continued to let my wife work on him opening up since we have been clashing. I didn't want to ruin this opportunity. After a few minutes, he basically stated he was still having a hard time about his friend's death. I won't go into many detail, but he said he had stopped going to the therapist before because he just didn't feel like it was helping. All this time, my wife and I thought he had moved forward with that, yet he was still trying to work through it. He cried, my wife cried, I cried. We all cried, and after several months of him not allowing me to hug him, he let me. It was a hug that lasted for a few minutes. I felt like I had my son back and that he had me back as well. From everyone's comments, I really needed to realize that while I am not a bad father, I needed to work on being better. I feel like this was a good first step. So after this part of our conversation, we got onto the other serious issues, such as the drug use. I asked him why he had cocaine in his room. He then said I shouldn't have gone through his stuff and that I needed to respect his privacy. I told him I was concerned for him, and that was the only reason I did it. I told him that cocaine is a dangerous drug and that I know from personal experience. He seemed taken back by this and gave me a confused look. I told him that I had a drug problem, specifically cocaine, and explained how messed up I was before I got help and before I met his mother. He looked shocked that I could relate a bit to him in regards to drug use. I told him we just wanted to make sure he was safe. I asked him how long he was doing it, and to my surprise he said he has never done it. He told us that it wasn't his. He said that a friend of his, not the girl but in the same circle of friends, gave it to him and was pressuring him into trying it, but he hadn't had the desire to try it. I calmly asked him if this friend was a drug dealer. For me, that was the only thing that made sense on why he would try to get my son hooked on such an expensive and very dangerous drug. Of course, the answer was yes. At this point, I didn't have a reason not to believe him because he was being very open about everything. I did, however, ask him if he would do a random drug test if I asked him. He said yes, but that it would show that he has been smoking pot. It is a relief knowing that he wasn't doing cocaine. I can deal with the pot a lot easier than having to get him off of cocaine. After discussing this, my wife and I were both still pretty calm, so we moved to the final part of our conversations, the ICP issue. My wife started this part off by apologizing to me for giving the okay to let him go to the festival. She then pulled up one of the videos on her iPad and handed it over to him. She told him to watch it. I think he knew where this was headed because he looked kind of upset. After the video, she then told him that we both decided it was not a good idea for him to go to this festival without an adult. He was upset, no yelling at first, but I had one last idea to maybe get him to understand why. I pulled up the personal message from this guy from a band that toured with ICP and let him read it. Apparently, he knew of the band and the guy, and this got through to him better than my wife or I could. My wife and I agreed that, depending on his reaction, we could try to work it out to maybe my son and I would go for a day. There were a few factors that we needed to work out for this to happen. When we told him this, he took it better than we thought. He did ask if he could take his girlfriend. Found out that they were dating at this moment. We said that we would have to speak with this girl's parents and get to know her better. He agreed to that, and I am currently trying to work the concert part out. Many might disagree with me, but if I am there, I can make sure he and his girlfriend aren't getting into trouble. Now we understand that not all of the ICP culture is bad, so we are compromising with him a bit on the face paint and music part of it. We asked if he would consider not wearing the face paint all the time when we go out. We explained that while it doesn't embarrass us, it does cause a distraction. He agreed that when we go out to family functions or family dinners that he would not wear it but would still most likely wear the t-shirt. We thought it was a good compromise. Things are headed in a positive direction, and my relationship with my son has gotten better over the last 24 hours. There are still some things to work out, but I appreciate everyone's input on this, even if it was calling me a piece of shit parent. I hope that after some time, he will try to stay away from these bad influences in his life, like his drug-dealing friend. My hope is that once I give his girlfriend a chance and stop judging her simply from the ICP culture, that I can actually like her. Some of you might be disappointed that I didn't throw him in juvie and make him give up on the juggalo culture, but he needs to find himself and I need to do my best to be there for him. He is a good kid that just happened to find the wrong people to call his friends. I won't consider his girlfriend a bad influence quite yet. I need to get to know her better. Thanks for reading. Final update. Hello again, Reddit. Some of you may be interested in knowing how things have been going and if we ended up going to the concert. I'll give you some insight on this final update. I don't anticipate needing to add any more after this update. So I went with the advice to get him back into therapy right away. We decided in order for him to go to the concert, we needed to get him in there and also give family therapy a try. The biggest thing we all learned from family therapy is that we lack in communications. While the talk we had in my last update was a good stepping stone, we still have a ways to go, but we are headed in the right direction. With time, I think we will be back to a healthy and trusting relationship. Now for Roger and his girlfriend. I mentioned that he wanted her to go to the concert with him if I took him. I also mentioned that I needed to meet with this girl's parents. It took some convincing, but I was able to go over to her house and have a conversation with her father about a week or so before the concert. Unbeknownst to me, her mother was out of the picture and had been since she was about 7 or 8. Her house is kind of run down, and her father invites me inside immediately. I can smell a combination of cigarette smoke and stale beer, which was extremely strong. It was a mess. It looked like someone threw a party and forgot to clean up. I suddenly felt bad for the girl and felt even worse for judging her. She was obviously a victim of a broken home. Despite the conditions, the conversation was productive, and we talked about her going to the concert. If he was okay with it, he agreed it would be fine but said he didn't have the money to help out with any of the costs. I said we would take care of it. I was there for less than 10 minutes. Maybe I am being judgmental on her father, but I felt bad, and we have had her over for dinner several times a week now. We have learned a lot about her, and she is just a damaged youth trying to get by with the hand she was dealt. She hasn't indicated any abuse, and she does appear to love her father a lot. She just hasn't really opened up much about anything, and short of being suspicious of child abuse, I don't know if it is really our business, so we haven't pushed it. Now for the concert. The three of us, son, his girlfriend, and myself, headed to the concert and were planning on being there for 2 days, the 25th and the 26th. We got there Friday evening, and there were people all over the place, all kinds of people. My son and his girlfriend wore face paint, but so was about half the people I saw. I felt out of place, but at the same time, I was glad I didn't let them come alone. The smell of skunk weed was strong right as we walked in the entrance. I saw some people trying to sell drugs, but we pretty much just ignored them. We didn't really have any issues, and the two of them enjoyed themselves. I gave them their space and didn't hover, but I did keep an eye on them from a distance. I didn't think being within a few feet of them would have been very encouraging on the progress we have made through therapy. I had to trust them a little bit and know they would make the right choices, but overall it was a good experience for my son and his girlfriend. It wasn't my type of atmosphere, but I wasn't there for me. I was there to support my son and just try to be a good father. Thanks for all the advice, and we will continue to work on growing a strong foundation as a family. Now on to the next story. Story 11. My boss collected money for flowers for me and then kept it for herself. Unfortunately, 7 weeks ago, my dear grandmother passed away at 91. A coworker of mine told me our supervisor collected money from our team for flowers as condolences for her death. No flowers were delivered from my supervisor and team to the funeral home. 2 weeks after the funeral, I found out a florist in town didn't deliver all their orders for my grandmother's funeral. I sent my supervisor a text explaining the flower mix-up we had experienced. In the text, I told her I was worried about not sending my gratitude to her and the team as I never got the flowers. Also, I wanted to make sure she and the team were not out the money because of the inept florist. I included my appreciation for her and the team thinking of me. My supervisor replied she didn't order any flowers for the funeral, telling me not to worry, and thankfully they were not lost. Instead, she was planning to send something else to my new husband and I as a condolence. Then she added a flippant, "Sorry I haven't gotten there yet. Now it has been 7 weeks since my grandmother's passing and 4 weeks since I sent the text about the flowers to my supervisor." My supervisor didn't follow through with sending my team's condolences for the death of my grandmother. My husband and I have not received anything from my supervisor or the team, but my boss still has their money, which is technically theft. Also, I'm feeling hurt by her lack of regard to my emotions about losing a very close loved one. My grandmother passed away 15 days after my wedding, which she couldn't attend due to the injury which led to her death. She was going to be the flower girl in our non-traditional ceremony, all of which I shared with my boss. It was a roller coaster of emotions in a short time frame. I'm uncertain of my course of action here. Should I go to HR? What should I say? My boss didn't take my money, but she did take my coworkers' money and didn't send their condolences. Do I tell HR I'm being treated unfairly as my boss didn't send me condolences like she has to others? She's made sure to send prompt bereavement gestures within 2 weeks for my coworkers with the family losses they've experienced in the past. It's not like it's required or expected for her or my coworkers to send condolences, though it is a considerate thing to do. I feel going to HR will make our already challenging relationship even worse, and she will be supported by them. HR will see it as a personal matter, and she was just forgetful. She may get a small slap on the wrist, but I will pay big as the employee that tattled on her. Our team is only 7 people, so she'll definitely know it was me. Do I ask her again about sending the flowers/gift? It already felt awkward when I contacted her before about the flowers, especially after her dismissive response. Also, I'm not certain how to approach it because it's a gesture of caring and other people's money that I'm asking her about. It just feels icky. Many people are telling me to just let it go, but others are saying she committed theft and to report her to HR. What do you think is the best way to handle the situation? I talked to 2 of my most trustworthy coworkers, one being the person who told me she thought my supervisor was sending the flowers for my grandmother's funeral. I expressed to them I had not received any condolences from my boss on their behalf and expressed my gratitude for their contributions when my grandmother passed. Both asked me if I felt they should mention anything to our supervisor. I told them that was up to their own discretion. I stopped there and decided to not pursue anything with HR. I felt like it was more important to move on. At least I was able to say thank you to my closest colleagues. Then, before our first staff meeting of the 2023 new year, our team was chatting together about our upcoming plans. I said that my husband and I were going to Florida in a few weeks to see my parents. This included visiting with my grandfather, who at 90 decided to live in Florida with my parents after losing my grandmother. I had mentioned this new living situation to my supervisor and colleagues prior to this meeting. I kid you not, my supervisor, after I shared my upcoming plans, asks me, "How's your grandma doing in Florida?" "Wait, what? Grandma?" I quickly and rather coldly replied, "My grandmother has passed." My supervisor got bright red and tried her best to cover her tracks by saying, "Oh yeah, I meant your grandpa." I got confused for just a moment. I said nothing more. I didn't even acknowledge her clumsy attempts to correct herself. An uncomfortably long pause of weirdness loomed over the room for a while before conversation resumed. My most confidential coworker afterward expressed to me how cringy it was to witness. My supervisor knew she had inconsiderately asked me about the well-being of a dead person. On top of that, she knew she was sitting on money collected to give the team's condolences for my grandmother's passing. At the beginning of March, I received a text out of the blue from my supervisor stating in a very professional manner, "I am so sorry. I just realized I have been remiss in sending a condolence gift from our team for your grandmother." Included was a $25 gift card to Starbucks. I sent the following text of gratitude to the team's texting thread. "Thank you everyone for the $2 gift card to Starbucks in memory of my grandmother passing in October. I appreciate the thoughtfulness." My supervisor, only 5 months down the road and after sticking her own foot in her mouth, did finally produce the gift. In the end, she made good on her responsibility and promised to our team to provide a gift on their behalf. However, not before embarrassing herself in front of her team and giving me the opportunity to point out her massive tardiness. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.